Hello everyone, and welcome to the Ben 10 What Ifs. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Ben 10 was reborn as the chaotic god. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Rebirth in Chaos. Pain flashed across Ben Tennyson's consciousness, white-hot, all-consuming. Absolute. The chronosapian time bomb detonated in his hands as he stood at the nexus point between universes, the modified Omnitrix failing to contain the temporal energy he'd hoped to redirect. He'd made his choice. Sacrifice one to save all. Himself for the multiverse. Worth it, he whispered as reality fractured around him. His atoms scattered across dimensions. Consciousness splintering into a billion fragments. Ben Tennyson ceased to exist in any conventional sense. Yet somehow, impossibly, awareness remained, a spark floating in an infinite void. Time had no meaning in this place. The spark drifted, occasionally brushing against other energies, cosmic forces beyond comprehension, primordial powers that had existed since before the first universe drew breath. With each contact, the spark absorbed something: knowledge, energy, purpose. Growing, the transformation wasn't gentle. The spark that had been Ben Tennyson stretched, compressed, expanded exponentially as cosmic energy poured into the void his sacrifice had created. The universe abhorred a vacuum, especially one torn in the fabric of reality by an act of ultimate sacrifice. The laws of cosmic balance demanded restoration. Something new coalesced from the remnants of the hero and the raw materials of creation itself. A consciousness sparked into being, familiar yet profoundly different. Memories flickered like distant stars. A grandfather's smile, a cousin's exasperated sigh, the weight of responsibility that came with wielding the most powerful device in the universe. The fragments orbited a new core of swirling chaos and unlimited potential. A voice that was not a voice reverberated through the non-space. Rise, Kronos, god of chaos and transformation. The multiverse requires balance. The being that had once been Ben Tennyson opened eyes that were not eyes and beheld existence from a perspective no human was meant to comprehend. The multiverse spread before him like an infinite tapestry of interconnected realities, each thread representing countless lives, civilizations, and potential futures. This isn't possible, he thought, his consciousness still clinging to human limitations. I'm just Ben, just a kid who found a watch. Reality disagreed. Power surged through him, reshaping his essence into something beyond mortal comprehension. The transformation felt oddly familiar, reminiscent of countless alien metamorphoses, yet fundamentally different. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't external. This was evolution. Through the haze of rebirth, he sensed danger. A disturbance rippled through the fabric of realities, something hungry and ancient pushing through barriers weakened by his sacrifice. The multiverse had a price for everything. His transcendence had created opportunity for darker forces. Instinct pulled him toward the disturbance. No conscious decision, just the inevitable gravity of responsibility that had defined Ben Tennyson now defining whatever he had become. Reality shattered around him as he manifested on solid ground for the first time since his transformation. Sensory information bombarded his newly formed consciousness, the acrid smell of smoke. Screams echoing between steel and glass skyscrapers, the tactile sensation of concrete beneath feet that felt simultaneously familiar and alien. His first coherent thought: this isn't Bellwood. Yet it was, and wasn't. Recognition flickered as he observed the cityscape. The bones were the same, but everything else had evolved. Buildings stretched impossibly high, vehicles hummed rather than roared as they navigated the chaos, and holographic displays flickered between structures displaying evacuation routes and emergency protocols in a language that was almost English. A woman's voice cut through his disorientation, sharp with authority: civilian in the exclusion zone. You need to evacuate immediately. He turned, movement feeling strangely fluid, to face a woman in her early 30s. Dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing what appeared to be a lab coat over tactical gear. The insignia on her shoulder meant nothing to him, concentric circles surrounding a stylized earth. I'm not, he began, then stopped, startled by the resonance in his own voice. It carried unexpected depth, vibrating with potential energy. The woman's express ion shifted from authoritative to puzzled as she properly looked at him. He followed her gaze, looking down at himself for the first time. His form appeared humanoid but wrong in subtle ways. Skin that seemed normal at first glance rippled with subsurface energy, cosmic patterns shifting just beneath the epidermis. A simple black bodysuit covered him, material unlike anything he recognized, simultaneously substantial and ethereal. Where the Omnitrix had once rested on his wrist, a circular pattern of emerald light pulsed directly from his skin, occasionally sending tendrils of energy across his form. "What are you?" the woman asked, scientific curiosity momentarily overriding caution. Before he could attempt an answer, the ground trembled violently. Buildings swayed, glass cracked, and civilians still fleeing the area screamed in renewed panic. The tremor wasn't geological, it carried the unmistakable signature of interdimensional disruption, a knowledge he somehow inherently possessed. "They're coming through," he stated, certainty filling him as awareness expanded beyond physical senses. The woman stared, recognition dawning. "The breach is widening. How do you know that?" The air 50 meters away shimmered. Reality folding in on itself like origami performed by invisible hands. Space-time tore open, edges of the rift crackling with violet energy that hurt to look at directly. Elongated limbs emerged, impossible geometries that the human mind struggled to process, composed of darkness deeper than mere absence of light. "Void walkers," he whispered, the term emerging from nowhere and everywhere in his consciousness. The woman's hand moved to a device at her hip. "Fall back," she shouted into it. "Full evacuation, 5-block radius. Class 4 incursion, repeat, Class 4. You should go too," he said, stepping forward as the creatures fully emerged, 3 humanoid shapes with too many limbs and faces composed of swirling darkness where features should be. "That's my job," she countered, drawing a compact weapon that hummed with energy. "Dr. Serena Maxwell, Quantum Defense Initiative. And you are clearly not a civilian, so who exactly are you?" The me bubbled up from the depths of his new consciousness. "Kronos." "Well, Kronos," she replied, adjusting settings on her weapon, "unless you've got something more substantial than dramatic lighting effects under your skin. I suggest you follow evacuation protocols." The nearest Void Walker sensed them, turning what passed for its head in their direction. It moved with impossible speed, covering half the distance before either could react. Dr. Maxwell fired her weapon, a concentrated beam of blue-white energy that struck the creature directly. It passed through harmlessly, like light through smoke. "Conventional energy weapons are ineffective against extradimensional matter," Kronos stated, knowledge flowing through him. "Thanks for the lecture," she snapped, backing away. "Got any help all suggestions to go with that assessment?" The Void Walker lunged. Without conscious thought, Kronos moved. Power surged through him as he intercepted the creature, his hand connecting with its torso. On contact, his skin flared with emerald light that spread into the creature's form. The Void Walker shrieked, a sound that existed somewhere between frequencies, inducing nausea in nearby humans, as its unstable matter reacted to Kronos' touch. "I can affect them," he realized, watching as the creature's form destabilized, edges becoming defined, limited, forced to conform to the physics of this reality. The transformation wasn't complete before the other 2 walkers attacked. One swept a limb that elongated impossibly, catching Kronos across the chest and sending him crashing through the wall of a nearby building. The impact would have killed a human instantly. Kronos felt it as little more than pressure. He emerged from the rubble to find drive. Maxwell holding her ground, having switched tactics. A device on her wrist projected a field of pulsing energy that seemed to slow the approaching walker, buying precious seconds. "Phase disruptor?" Kronos asked, rejoining her. "Prototype," she confirmed tersely. 15 seconds of charge, then we're in trouble. The third walker circled behind them, attempting to flank. Kronos assessed the situation with newfound clarity. These weren't mindless destroyers. They were hunting, coordinating, intelligent. The rift they'd emerged from pulsed ominously, widening further. "The breach is their priority," he said. "They're not here to attack. They're preparing for something larger to come through." Dr. Maxwell's eyes widened. "A Class 5. The city wouldn't survive. I need to close it." The knowledge of how to do so flowed into him, instinctual rather than learned. "That's impossible. We've been trying to develop breach containment technology for years. The energy requirements alone. Cover me, Kronos interrupted, moving G toward the rift before she could object further. The walkers immediately redirected their attention, abandoning all other targets to intercept him. They recognized the threat he posed to their mission. Good, he could use that. Kronos raised both hands, calling upon the power swirling within him. Green energy cascaded from his fingertips, meeting the Void Walkers head-on. Where it touched them, their forms solidified, cosmic rules asserting themselves over interdimensional chaos. They fought against the transformation, their movements becoming jerky and pained. Dr. Maxwell proved resourceful, using her phase disruptor to slow the largest walker at a critical moment, then switching to some kind of grappling device that wrapped energy cords around its now partially solidified limbs. The restraints wouldn't hold long. But Kronos only needed seconds. Reaching the breach, he plunged his hands directly into the rift. Agony lanced through him as two incompatible realities fought for dominance within his form. The void pulled, hungry and ancient, seeking to draw him in. Something on the other side, something vast and patient, turned its attention toward him. I was Ben Tennyson, he reminded himself. Fighting against the void's pull. I saved the universe more times than I can count. This is just another Tuesday. Power surged from the emerald symbol embedded in his wrist, spreading throughout his body. The sensation echoed the familiar feeling of transformation, but rather than changing himself, he was changing reality around him. Cosmic energy poured into the breach, saturating the torn edges of space-time, reinforcing the barriers between dimensions. The Void Walkers shrieked in unison, abandoning their physical attacks to assault him psychically. Alien thoughts crash. D against his consciousness. Promises of power, threats of obliteration, incomprehensible concepts that human language had no words for. Not interested, Kronos growled, pushing back. The breach resisted closure, edges slippery and unstable. Something was actively holding it open from the other side, something ancient and powerful. A presence brushed against his mind, vast beyond comprehension. Tennyson, it resonated, the name vibrating through his very atoms. The wielder ascended, unexpected, fortuitous. The voice held recognition. Whatever this entity was, it knew him, or knew what he had been. Sorry, not taking visitors today, Kronos replied, focusing his will through the emerald symbol. It responded, power magnifying exponentially. The breach began to close, reality knitting itself back together under his guidance. We will meet again, God of Chaos. Your rebirth is merely the beginning. The presence withdrew as the breach sealed completely, leaving Kronos standing with arms outstretched before empty air. The Void Walkers, cut off from their home dimension, collapsed into themselves, matter dissolving into constituent particles that quickly dispersed. Silence fell over the devastated street, broken only by the distant wail of emergency vehicles and the settling of debris. Kronos lowered his arms slowly, the emerald light fading from his skin as the power receded to a more manageable level. Footsteps approached from behind. Dr. Maxwell stopped a cautious distance away, her weapon lowered but not holstered. That should have been impossible, she said, scientific precision barely concealing awe. Dimensional breaches don't just close like that. Kronos turned to face her. Apparently they do. Who are you, really? Her eyes narrowed, professional C. Curiosity mingling with justified suspicion. The question echoed through his transformed consciousness. Who was he now? The memories of Ben Tennyson felt simultaneously distant and immediate, belonging to him yet separate from his current existence. The name Kronos had emerged spontaneously, carrying weight and meaning beyond his understanding. I'm still figuring that out, he answered honestly. Dr. Maxwell studied him, scientist's eyes cataloging details. Whatever you are, you just prevented what would have been a catastrophic incursion. That buys you some credibility. She activated her communicator. Maxwell to command. Breach contained. Repeat. Breach contained. Send cleanup and assessment teams. After receiving confirmation, she returned her attention to Kronos. You're coming with me. Am I under arrest? He asked, curious rather than concerned. If I thought we could hold you, maybe. She gestured to the destruction around them. But something tells me conventional detention wouldn't work. Consider this a professional invitation. The Quantum Defense Initiative exists to understand and address exactly what just happened here. You clearly have insight we need. And you want to study me, Kronos added, reading between the lines. Dr. Maxwell didn't bother denying it. Wouldn't you, in my position? A smile tugged at his lips, a remarkably human expression on his transformed face. Fair point. Our facility is 20 minutes from here. Transport is inbound. She maintained professional distance, but curiosity burned behind her eyes. I have about 1,000 questions. I might not have answers for all of them. Kronos looked down at his hands, watching the subtle patterns shifting beneath his skin. This is new for me too. Then we'll figure it out together. Dr. Maxwell's communicator chimed. Transport's here. A sleek vehicle descended from above. Not quite a helicopter, not quite a jet, operating on technology that seemed advanced even by the standards of this evolved Bellwood. It settled onto the cracked pavement with minimal turbulence, side doors sliding open to reveal an interior filled with monitoring equipment and armed personnel. Dr. Maxwell gestured toward the vehicle. Coming. Kronos hesitated, new instincts warring with old habits. Ben Tennyson would have been suspicious of government facilities and scientists eager to study him. But he wasn't just Ben anymore, and his new awareness suggested he could leave any time he chose, regardless of their security measures. Lead the way, Doctor, he decided, following her toward the transport. As they lifted off, Kronos looked down at the city below, familiar in outline yet changed in details. A strange sensation settled over him. He had died here, in a sense. Been reborn here too. The symmetry felt appropriate. Dr. Maxwell observed him from across the transport compartment, her expression carefully neutral but eyes sharp with assessment. The facility director will want a full debrief. I should warn you, we've been tracking dimensional anomalies for years, but nothing like what happened today. You're going to cause quite a stir. Story of my life, Kronos murmured. Memories of media frenzies and government attention flickering through his mind. The transport banked, heading toward the outskirts of the city where mountains rose in the distance. As they approached, a structure came into view, a sprawling complex of interconnected buildings that appeared to be part research facility, part military installation. Unlike the gleaming skyscrapers of the city, this complex was deliberately understated, designed to blend into the landscape. Welcome to Quantum Point, Drive, Maxwell said as they began descent. Established 15 years ago after the first incursion. First incursion, Kronos echoed, when we realized we weren't alone in the multiverse, and that not everything out there is friendly. Her expression darkened momentarily. We lost New Washington before we understood what we were dealing with. The transport settled onto a landing pad, and the side door slid open. Armed guards stood at attention, expressions professionally blank but postures betraying tension. They'd been briefed on what was arriving. Standard procedure, Drive, Maxwell explained, noting his attention to the security. We don't get many visitors who can close dimensional breaches with their bare hands. They disembarked, Kronos following Drive, Maxwell across the landing pad toward an entrance recessed into the mountainside. Security checkpoints appeared at regular intervals, each more sophisticated than the last. Personnel stepped aside as they approached, clearly having received instructions to allow their passage. Your security team seems nervous, Kronos observed as they passed through yet another scanner that beeped frantically at his presence. You're registering on our instruments as a walking dimensional anomaly, she replied matter-of-factly. Quote, every detection system we have is currently having the equivalent of a panic attack. So yes, people are nervous. The final doors parted to reveal a circular chamber dominated by a massive holography. See display showing real-time data from across the globe. Points of light indicated monitoring stations. Areas of concern were highlighted in various colors according to threat level. Several sections pulsed red, active situations requiring attention. A man stood before the display, hands clasped behind his back. He turned as they entered, revealing a weathered face with eyes that had seen too much. And a posture that spoke of military background despite the civilian clothes. Dr. Maxwell, he acknowledged. This is our visitor. Director Chambers, this is Kronos, she introduced. He closed the breach in New Bellwood. Without assistance. The director's eyebrows rose fractionally, the only indication of surprise he allowed himself. Impossible, according to everything we know about dimensional physics. Yet here we are, Kronos responded, meeting the man's evaluating gaze. Indeed, Chambers gestured to a doorway leading off the main chamber. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more appropriate for a comprehensive debrief. The indicated room proved to be a conference space rather than an interrogation chamber, a diplomatic choice that Kronos appreciated. Walls displayed data streams and monitoring feeds, maintaining situational awareness while offering relative privacy. "Please, sit," Chambers offered, taking a seat himself at the head of a sleek table. Dr. Maxwell positioned herself to his right, pulling up a holographic interface that presumably allowed her to take notes. Kronos settled into a chair, finding it surprisingly comfortable despite being designed for standard human dimensions. "I assume you have questions." "More than you can imagine," Chambers replied. "But perhaps we should start with the most pressing. Are there more breaches coming? And can you sense them before they open fully?" The directness caught Kronos slightly off guard, not wasting time on his origins or nature, but focusing immediately on practical matters. He respected the pragmatism. "I can sense disturbances in dimensional stability," he confirmed, knowledge continuing to emerge from his transformed consciousness. "The breach today wasn't random. Though, say creatures, void walkers, were preparing for something larger to come through. Something that knew me, or knew who I used to be." "Used to be," Dr. Maxwell interjected, fingers pausing over her interface. Kronos weighed his response carefully. How much should he reveal? These people were strangers, yet they were also defenders of Earth, and Earth, at least. The memory of Ben Tennyson's countless interactions with authorities flashed through his mind, times when openness had helped and times when it had hindered. "I wasn't always like this," he finally said. "Before I was Kronos, I was human. A human named Ben Tennyson." Recognition flashed across Maxwell's face. "The Omnitrix wielder. That's impossible. Ben Tennyson disappeared over a century ago during the Chronosapian crisis." The timeline hit Kronos like a physical blow. "A century. 117 years, to be precise," Director Chambers confirmed. "The historical records are quite detailed. Tennyson sacrificed himself to prevent multiversal collapse. His actions are credited with stabilizing the timestream, though the mechanism was never fully understood. I detonated a modified Chronosapian time bomb," Kronos explained. "Memories crystallizing. The Omnitrix was supposed to contain and redirect the temporal energy. It didn't go exactly as planned." "Understatement of the century, Maxwell muttered. "You're claiming you're actually Ben Tennyson, somehow transformed rather than destroyed by that event." "I have his memories," Kronos said carefully. "His sense of responsibility. But I'm also something else now. Something more. A dimensional entity," she pressed, scientific curiosity overtaking professional reserve. "A god, according to whatever force reorganized my consciousness." The word felt strange in his mouth. Pretentious and inadequate simultaneously. Director Chambers leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Let's set aside theological implications for the moment. Dr. Maxwell, what readings did you get from the breach event?" Dr. Maxwell swiped through data on her interface. "Unprecedented energy signatures. The breach was Class 4 and expanding toward Class 5 before Kronos intervened. His energy signature is complex. Partially consistent with historical Omnitrix readings, but with significant deviations. Most notably, he appears to generate counter-harmonic wavelengths that neutralize void energy." Quote, "Which explains how you closed the breach," Chambers concluded, returning his attention to Kronos. "A capability we've been attempting to develop for decades." "It wasn't conscious knowledge," Kronos admitted. "More instinctual. Fascinating." Dr. Maxwell's fingers flew over her interface. "Instinctual manifestation of complex dimensional manipulation. Abilities suggests integrated rather than acquired knowledge structures." Dr. Chambers interrupted gently. "Perhaps we could postpone the theoretical analysis." He addressed Kronos directly. "Whatever your origins, your actions today potentially saved thousands of lives. For that, you have our gratitude and, cautiously, our trust. The question becomes, what do you intend to do now?" The directness of the question caught Kronos by surprise. What did he intend? He hadn't had time to consider his purpose beyond reacting to the immediate crisis. The being that named him Kronos had mentioned balance, the multiverse requiring equilibrium. The Void Walkers and the entity behind them clearly posed a threat to that balance. I need to understand what I've become, he said finally. And I need to learn more about these incursions. The entity controlling the Void Walkers recognized me, or recognized Ben Tennyson. That connection can't be coincidental. Then perhaps our interests align, Chambers proposed. The Quantum Defense Initiative exists to understand and counter extradimensional threats. We can offer resources, information, and a base of operations. In exchange, we would value your insights and, when necessary, your unique abilities. A partnership, not a study subject, Drive. Maxwell clarified, correctly interpreting Kronos' momentary hesitation. Though I won't pretend I'm not scientifically fascinated. At least you're honest about it, Kronos said with a slight smile. I'll accept your offer, with one condition: I maintain my autonomy. If I need to leave, I leave. No attempts to contain or control me. Quote, agreed, Chambers said without hesitation. Though I hope you'll consult with us before taking unilateral action that might affect global security. Fair enough. Kronos extended a hand, the gesture automatic, a human custom embedded in Ben Tennyson's memories. Chambers shook it without evident concern for touching an entity that had just neutralized Tradimensional invaders with his bare hands. Welcome to the initiative, Kronos. As they finalized arrangements, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. The holographic displays flashed crimson, data streams accelerating. Director. A technician burst into the room. Multiple breaches opening simultaneously across the globe. Class 3 and 4, all exhibiting the same energy signature as the new Bellwood incident. Chambers rose immediately. Coordinate with global response teams. Priority to population centers. They're testing defenses, Kronos realized, rising as well. The entity I sensed. This is strategic. Can you help, Doctor? Maxwell asked, professional demeanor firmly in place despite the evident crisis. Kronos extended his awareness, sensing the dimensional distu. Our bances as clearly as if they were visible to the naked eye. I can reach them, not all simultaneously, but faster than your conventional transport. How? She demanded. In answer, Kronos allowed power to flow through him. The emerald symbol on his wrist flared brilliantly, energy cascading across his form. The sensation of transformation rippled through him, not changing shape as Ben's aliens had, but altering his relationship with space-time itself. I believe, he said, voice resonating with power, I can teleport. That's theoretically impossible without Drive. Maxwell began. A stable quantum reference point. Kronos finished. I know, but I don't think normal physical limitations apply anymore. He focused on the largest breach signature displayed on the monitors, Sydney, Australia. I'll start with the most critical and work my way through them. Wait, Doctor. Maxwell grabbed a small device from the table and tossed it to him. Communication link. So we can coordinate. Kronos caught it, nodding appreciation for the practical thinking. I'll check in after Sydney. Be careful, she said, surprising herself with the genuine concern in her voice. We still have about 900 questions to go. A smile flickered across his face, so human an expression on an increasingly inhuman visage. Looking forward to it, concentrating on the Sydney coordinates, Kronos the energy surging through him to peak. Space folded around him, reality bending to accommodate his will. The last thing he saw before teleporting was Dr. Maxwell's expression, scientific fascination warring with genuine concern. Then he was standing on Sydney Harbour Bridge, facing a massive dimensional tear hovering over the Opera House. Void walkers poured through by the dozens, civilians fleeing in terror below. The breach pulsed, widening further with each passing second. Round 2, Kronos murmured, hands flaring with emerald energy as he launched himself toward the chaos. The battle, for Sydney unfolded differently than New Bellwood. With dozens of Void walkers already emerged, Kronos couldn't immediately reach the breach. Each entity required precious seconds to neutralize, grab, Bing limbs that moved like smoke until his touch forced them into conformity with physical laws, then disintegrating their unstable matter with concentrated bursts of energy. Local military forces had responded, but their weapons proved as ineffective as Dr. Maxwell's had been. Kronos called instructions as he fought, directing them to focus on evacuation rather than futile attacks. They feed on energy weapons, he explained to a bewildered commander. Conventional firearms have minimal effect, but physical objects can slow them once they're partially solidified. Understanding dawned. The commander redirected his forces, using vehicles and barriers to corral the creatures while Kronos methodically worked through them toward the breach. The entity beyond the rift observed but didn't directly intervene. Studying his techniques, Kronos realized. Learning his capabilities. This was reconnaissance as much as attack. When the last Void Walker fell and the breach finally closed under his hands, Kronos took a moment to survey the damage. Structural casualties were significant, but civilian losses had been minimized by the rapid response. A qualified success, but the pattern troubled him. The communication device drive Maxwell had given him activated. Kronos, status report on Sydney. Breach closed, walkers neutralized, he reported. Where next? New Shanghai showing critical escalation, she replied. Forwarding coordinates. By the time Kronos had closed the fifth breach, this one in Moscow, the pattern was unmistakable. Each incursion targeted a different defense system or approach, testing Earth's capabilities and responses. This wasn't random chaos, it was calculated information gathering. Exhaustion began to set in as he teleported to the sixth site, Rio de Janeiro. His new form possessed tremendous stamina, but even cosmic power had its limits. The emerald symbol on his wrist pulsed erratically, energy fluctuating as he engaged yet another wave of Void Walkers. They're wearing you down deliberately, drive. Maxwell observed through the communication link, monitoring his energy readings remotely. Each breach is calibrated to require slightly more power to close. Notice that, Kronos grunted, grappling with a walker that had evolved since the earlier encounters, its form more resistant to his transformative touch. Learning and adapting. You need to withdraw, she advised. Global defense forces are better prepared now. They can contain until you recover. Contain, not close, he countered, finally overcoming the walker's resistance. If these breaches stay open, whatever's coming through next will be worse. The Rio breach proved the most difficult yet. As Kronos approached, the rift actually expanded, as if actively resisting his presence. The entity beyond was adapting to his methods. Pushing his power to its limits, Kronos pressed both hands against the fabric of reality, willing it to knit together. Resistance met his efforts, conscious. Deliberate opposition from the other side. Persistence, the vast consciousness noted, pressing against the barriers of his mind. A human trait retained. Fascinating. Who are you? Kronos demanded, maintaining pressure on the breach while engaging mentally. What do you want with this reality? I am the Void Emperor, came the response, concepts rather than words flooding his consciousness. This reality and all others belong to the Void. Your ascension merely accelerates the inevitable. Sorry to disappoint, but this reality's under protection. Kronos redoubled his efforts, drawing deep on reserves he hadn't known existed. Pain lanced through him as the Void Emperor's consciousness pressed harder against his own. Images flooded his mind, countless realities consumed. Civilizations that had risen and fallen while Ben Tennyson was still playing hero with his new watch, the vast and patient hunger of a being that existed between dimensions. Your Omnitrix was merely a shadow of true power. The Emperor continued, a crude tool compared to what you now wield. Yet you limit yourself with human thinking. Despite himself, Kronos felt curiosity. What do you know about the Omnitrix? More than its creator, more than you. Amusement colored the vast consciousness. Another time, God of Chaos. You grow weary, and I am patient. The pressure suddenly released. The breach collapsed so quickly that Kronos stumbled forward, nearly falling. Around him, the remaining Void Walkers disintegrated simultaneously, returning to the nothingness from which they'd emerged. Kronos. Doctor. Maxwell's voice came through the communicator, concern evident. Your readings just went haywire. What happened? He steadied himself against a partially destroyed building, Brea. Thing heavily despite no longer needing oxygen in the conventional sense. The breaches are closing. All of them, worldwide. Confirmed, she replied after a brief pause. Energy signatures dissipating across all monitoring stations. Did you do that? No, Kronos admitted. They're withdrawing. The Void Emperor got what it wanted for now. The Void Emperor. We need to talk, Kronos said. gathering the energy for one final teleport. This was just the beginning. When he rematerialized in the quantum point control center, the strain of the day finally caught up with him. His form flickered, emerald light pulsing erratically across his skin. Dr. Maxwell was there immediately, scientific instruments forgotten as she helped steady him. "You've overextended," she observed, guiding him to a seat. "Your energy patterns are highly unstable. Not used to limitations anymore," Kronos admitted. As Ben, I knew exactly what each alien form could do, how long the Omnitrix would last. "This is different. You need rest," she stated definitively, switching from scientist to physician. "Whatever cosmic energy you're channeling needs time to replenish." Director Chambers approached, expression grave. "Preliminary reports indicate over 2,000 casualties worldwide, with infrastructure damage in the billions. Without your intervention, projections suggested casualties in the hundreds of thousands." "Cold comfort to the 2,000, Kronos murmured, Ben Tennyson's conscience still very much intact despite his transformation. "Perspective is necessary in our line of work," Chambers replied, not unkindly. "You've bought us time and valuable intelligence. Dr. Maxwell will arrange accommodations while you recover." "The Void Emperor mentioned the Omnitrix," Kronos said before Chambers could withdraw. "It knew details about its creation. That can't be coincidental. The Omnitrix is historical technology now, Drive." Maxwell interjected. "Most of its functions were incorporated into global defense systems decades ago, though never with the effectiveness Ben Tennyson achieved. Because the Omnitrix was bonded to Ben specifically," Kronos realized, memories aligning with new knowledge. "Azimuth designed it that way, though I never fully understood why. Azimuth's personal archives were lost during the Galvan catastrophe 30 years ago," Chambers informed him. Another apparent casualty of these interdimensional conflicts. The implications settled heavily on Kronos. A century of history had passed while he was, whatever he had been before re-emerging. The universe he knew, the people he'd cared about, were mostly gone or fundamentally changed. "I need to see it," he decided. Historical records, technological developments, everything that happened after Ben Tennyson's disappearance. "Dr. Maxwell can provide access to our archives," Chambers agreed. "But first, rest. Even gods apparently need recovery time." After Chambers departed, Drive. Maxwell led Kronos to a suite within the facility, surprisingly comfortable quarters that appeared designed for long-term residence rather than temporary containment. "We maintain living spaces for specialized consultants," she explained, activating systems with a wave of her hand. "Environmental controls can be adjusted to your preferences, though I'm not entirely sure what those might be now." "Neither am I," Kronos admitted, examining the space. "Standard human conditions should be fine. I still think largely like Ben Tennyson, even if this form has different requirements." Dr. Maxwell lingered by the entrance. Scientific curiosity warring with professional boundaries. "The energy you channel, it's similar to reports of the original Omnitrix, but exponentially more powerful and seemingly integrated with your biological structure. Or what passes for biological structure in your current form. You want to run tests," Kronos surmised, a smile tugging at his lips. "About 1 million of them," she confirmed without apology. "But they can wait until you've stabilized." "Appreciated." He settled onto a couch that adjusted to support his weight. "You've handled today remarkably well, see. Considering you woke up to a normal Tuesday and ended it debriefing a newborn god. Bold of you to assume any Tuesday is normal in this job," she countered, a hint of humor breaking through her professional demeanor. 2 years ago, I was a theoretical physicist specializing in quantum entanglement. Then the Moscow incursion happened, and theory became very practical very quickly." "What happened in Moscow?" Kronos asked, genuine interest overriding exhaustion. Dr. Maxwell hesitated, then made a decision. She sat in a chair across from him, the gesture signifying a shift from official to personal conversation. "An entire district phased partially into a parallel dimension," she explained. 50,000 people caught between realities. Conventional physics couldn't explain it, much less solve it. The Quantum Defense Initiative recruited me and others like me, scientists whose theoretical work suddenly had urgent practical applications." "Did you save them?" "The people in Moscow. Some," she said, shadows crossing her expression. About 60% were successfully reintegrated into our reality. The others, we still don't know exactly what happened to them. They're not dead in any conventional sense. Just elsewhere. I'm sorry, Kronos offered, recognizing the weight of perceived failure she carried. She shook her head slightly. It drove our research forward. We've had better success rates in subsequent incidents, though nothing on today's scale has happened before. She studied him with renewed scientific interest. Your arrival changes everything. If we can understand how you manipulate dimensional boundaries, we might finally develop effective countermeasures. I'll help however I can, Kronos promised. Though I'm still figuring out my own capabilities. Dr. Maxwell nodded, rising. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll begin proper analysis and review the historical records you wanted. At the doorway, she paused. For what it's worth, Ben Tennyson was considered one of humanity's greatest heroes. There are monuments, museums dedicated to how he saved reality. Whatever you've become now, that legacy remains. After she departed, Kronos sat in silence, processing everything. The emerald symbol on his wrist pulsed steadily, energy patterns stabilizing as he rested. He examined it closely, seeing both similarities and profound differences from the Omnitrix he'd worn for so many years. What am I now? He wondered aloud. No cosmic voice answered. No sudden revelation presented itself. Just the quiet hum of advanced technology and the weight of a century's passage pressing down on him. Kronos closed his eyes, not to sleep. He suspected that particular human requirement might no longer apply, but to organize his thoughts. Tomorrow would bring answers, but also more questions. The Void Emperor clearly had plans that involved him specifically. Dr. Maxwell and the Quantum Defense Initiative represented this Earth's best defenses, but they were outmatched by interdimensional threats. And somewhere in all of this, Ben Tennyson's core principles remained. Protect the innocent, use power responsibly, and when all else fails, improvise. Some things, apparently, transcended even godhood. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Divine Intervention. Kronos stood at the center of a perfect circle of light, suspended in what appeared to be an infinite void. Unlike the hungry darkness of the breaches, this void shimmered with potential, like the canvas of reality before a painter's first stroke. Motes of energy drifted past, occasionally brushing his skin and sending ripples of awareness through his consciousness. He hadn't intended to come here. One moment he'd been in his quarters at Quantum Point, sorting through historical records of the century he'd missed. And the next, displacement. Not teleportation as he'd experienced before, but something more fundamental. As if reality itself had hiccuped. The newly ascended rarely navigate the nexus intentionally at first. A voice observed from behind him. Your subconscious called you here. Kronos turned to find a woman regarding him with ancient eyes. She appeared human at first glance, tall and elegant with copper bronze skin and hair like spun platinum that defied gravity, floating as if suspended in water. But subtle wrongness revealed her true nature. Her movements left prismatic afterimages. And occasionally her features shifted, revealing something far less human beneath the surface. Who are you? He asked. Where is this place? I am Lyra, goddess of harmony. She inclined her head, the gesture formal yet somehow containing a hint of irony. As for where, you stand in the nexus, the crossroads between realities. The place from which all universes are born and to which they eventually return. Kronos looked down at the circle of light beneath his feet, noting how it pulsed in synchronization with the emerald symbol on his wrist. I didn't mean to come here. Yet here you are. Lyra circled him slowly, her movements fluid and precise. Her attire shifted as she moved, sometimes appearing as flowing robes, other times as armor formed from crystallized light. Newly born gods rarely have perfect control of their aspects. Chaos, especially, tends to be unpredictable. You know what I am. Of course. A smile flickered across her face, beautiful and terrible simultaneously. Your ascension sent ripples throughout the nexus. The Pantheon has been most curious about you, Kronos, god of chaos and transformation. Or should I address you as Ben Tennyson? The name triggered a cascade of memories, a lifetime that felt increasingly distant. Ben died saving his universe. Did he? Lyra raised an eyebrow. Deaths are rarely so simple for beings of significance. The universe abhors waste, particularly of potential. Your sacrifice created a vacuum in the cosmic order, one that needed filling. So I became this. He gestured to himself. You became what you always were becoming, she corrected. The Omnitrix was never merely a tool, Kronos. It was preparation. Azimuth knew this, though perhaps not the specific outcome. The mention of his old mentor sparked indignation. Azimuth knew I'd die and become some kind of god. Lyra laughed, a sound like crystal bells. Of course not. Even we cannot see all ends. But he understood potential when he saw it. The ability to transform, to adapt, to embody the essence of other beings, these were always your strengths. Now they have simply evolved. Kronos absorbed this, finding it resonated with instincts he didn't fully understand yet. Why am I here now? Why are you telling me this? Because the Pantheon has decreed it. Her expression grew serious. Your rebirth comes at a critical moment. The barriers between realities grow thin. The Void Emperor stirs after eons of dormancy. Convergence approaches. The Void Emperor mentioned convergence, Kronos recalled. What is it exactly? Lyra waved a hand, and the void around them transformed. Suddenly they stood among countless glowing strands, a cosmic web of interconnected realities stretching infinitely in all directions. The multiverse, she explained. Each strand a universe with its own history, its own physical laws. For eons, they have existed in balance, separate yet connected through the nexus. As Kronos watched, the strands began to shift, drawing closer together in places. Where they touched, energy flared, sometimes harmoniously, sometimes destructively. Convergence, Lyra continued, is the process by which multiple realities begin to merge. In small doses, this is natural, a cosmic exhalation and inhalation. But what approaches now is not natural. It is forced, accelerated by entities that seek to reshape all existence to their preferences. The Void Emperor, among others. Her expression darkened. The Emperor exists between realities, feeding on the energies released when universes collide. It has waited patiently, nudging events toward greater instability for millennia. The cosmic display shifted again, showing a massive shadow moving between the strands, occasionally reaching out to tug one closer to another. If unchecked, Lyra said solemnly, convergence will result in the collapse of the multiverse. Not into nothingness, but into a singularity controlled by those who orchestrated the collapse, a reality where they establish themselves as absolute rulers of all that remains. And I'm supposed to stop this? Kronos asked, the weight of cosmic responsibility settling uncomfortably on shoulders still adjusting to godhood. You were one piece of a complex response, Lyra clarified. Your transformation was unanticipated by those orchestrating convergence. LD card introduced into a carefully structured game. I've been the wild card before, Kronos mused, memories of countless alien encounters filtering through his consciousness. Indeed, Lyra's th quirked in what might have been amusement. Which is why I have been assigned as your guide, to help channel your chaotic nature toward constructive ends. Assigned? By whom? The celestial Pantheon. Those entities you might consider gods in the traditional sense. I serve as their emissary to the mortal realms. She gestured, and the cosmic display dissolved back into the featureless void. Why? Our transformation places you in an unusual position, neither fully of the Pantheon nor separate from it. A new god, with old connections to the mortal realm. Kronos considered this. So I'm what? On probation. Lyra's laugh returned, genuine this time, an apt mortal concept. Yes, you might consider this a probationary period. Your power is immense but unrefined. Your understanding, limited by your former humanity. I am to provide guidance while you grow into your role. And if I don't want this role? Kronos challenged, Ben Tennyson's inherent resistance to authority surfacing through the divine consciousness. Lyra's expression sobered. Then trillions will perish as realities collapse, including the Earth you just defended and the humans you still care for. She stepped closer, her eyes shifting from merely ancient to something unfathomable. Make no mistake, Kronos, your ascension carries obligations. Power and responsibility remain intertwined, even for gods. The echo of his grandfather's lessons resonated through Kronos's transformed consciousness. Some principles, it seemed, transcended even godhood. Fine, he conceded. What happens now? Now we return to your chosen reality. The breaches you closed were merely the beginning. The Void Emperor's forces will return, better prepared. And there are other threats arising as convergence accelerates. Lyra extended a hand. Your human allies will need our assistance. Kronos hesitated before taking her hand. Will they see you? Or are you one of those, only visible to the chosen one, types of guides? Her lips curved in amusement. I am quite capable of physical manifestation, though my true form would be problematic for mortal perceptions. I will adopt an appropriate appearance. Convenient. Kronos finally accepted her outstretched hand. The moment their skin touched, energy cascaded between them, emerald green intertwining with Lyra's prismatic light. The void around them shimmered, then collapsed. Reality reasserted itself with jarring abruptness. Kronos found himself back in his quarters at Quantum Point, Lyra standing beside him. She had indeed modified her appearance, her otherworldly qualities muted. Hair now obeying normal physics, attire transformed into something resembling the professional clothing worn by initiative personnel. Only her eyes remained unchanged, carrying depths no human gaze could match. The door slid open without warning, revealing Drive. Maxwell mid-stride. She froze at the threshold, eyes widening as she registered Lyra's presence. Security breach in guest quarters. She said automatically into her communicator, free hand moving toward the weapon at her hip. That won't be necessary, Drive. Maxwell, Kronos interjected quickly. This is a colleague. Doctor. Maxwell's expression shifted from alarm to scientific curiosity as she properly assessed Lyra. Another entity like yourself. Our sensors didn't detect any breach or teleportation signature. Your instruments, while impressive for mortal technology, have limitations, Lyra stated, her tone carrying subtle harmonics that seemed to soothe even as they dismissed. I am Lyra, goddess of harmony and emissary of the celestial pantheon. Goddess. Doctor. Maxwell repeated the word with the careful neutrality of a scientist encountering data that challenged fundamental assumptions. That's a significant claim, yet accurate. Lyra replied without defensiveness. Your universe exists within a complex multiverse governed by cosmic principles. Some entities embody and maintain these principles. I am one such entity. Doctor. Maxwell's gaze shifted to Kronos. Is she telling the truth? As far as I can tell, he confirmed. I just had a dimensional displacement to somewhere called the Nexus. Lyra explained some things about what I've become and why the breaches are happening. The convergence, Drive, Maxwell surmised, surprising both of them. We've been tracking mathematical anomalies in the quantum field for months. Reality itself appears to be folding in places. Lyra's expression sharpened with interest. Your understanding is more advanced than expected for your civilization's development stage. Necessity accelerates innovation, Drive. Maxwell replied, a hint of pride breaking through her scientific detachment. When interdimensional incursions became a regular occurrence, theoretical physics quickly became applied physics. Indeed, Lyra inclined her head slightly, acknowledgement between equals that seemed to surprise even her. Perhaps we should brief your leadership. The situation is more urgent than your organization currently comprehends. Doctor. Maxwell hesitated only briefly before nodding. I'll arrange it. Director Chambers will want to hear this directly. She activated her communicator again. Maxwell to Chambers. We have a diplomatic situation requiring your immediate attention. While Drive. Maxwell coordinated with facility leadership. Kronos studied Lyra with new perspective. Her presence carried an aura of absolute certainty, the confidence of an entity who had existed since before humans walked upright. Yet something about her interaction with Dr. Maxwell suggested complexity beneath the divine facade. You're surprised by her, he observed quietly. Lyra's eyes flickered toward him. Mortals rarely cease to surprise, even after eons of observation. Their capacity for adaptation is commendable. Before Kronos could pursue this line of conversation, Drive. Maxwell rejoined them. Director Chambers will meet us in the secure briefing room. If you'll follow me. The facility corridors bustled with activity, personnel moving with the focused urgency that followed crisis events. Most avoided looking directly at Kronos and Lyra, though whispers followed in their wake. Word of his actions during the breaches had clearly spread. The briefing room proved to be a different space than Kronos had visited previously, larger, with a Advanced holographic systems and secure communications equipment lining the walls. Director Chambers waited with a small group of senior staff, their expressions varying from cautious curiosity to outright skepticism. Dr. Maxwell informs me we have another visitor, Chambers began, eyes assessing Lyra carefully. One claiming significant knowledge about our current situation. Director Chambers, Lyra acknowledged, seamlessly adapting to human protocol while maintaining an aura of authority. I am Lyra, emissary of the Celestial Pantheon and guardian to Kronos during his transitional phase. Transitional phase, Chambers echoed. Divine ascension is rarely instantaneous, she explained, as if discussing something as mundane as employee orientation. Kronos possesses tremendous power, but limited understanding of cosmic structures. I have been assigned to provide guidance. Chambers absorbed this with remarkable composure. And this guidance includes information about the dimensional breaches. Among other things, Lyra confirmed, what your organization has experienced represents merely the vanguard of a multiversal threat. The breaches will continue, increasing in both frequency and magnitude as convergence accelerates. Perhaps you should start at the beginning, Chambers suggested, gesturing toward the conference table. Over the next hour, Lyra outlined the concept of convergence, the Celestial Pantheon's role in maintaining multiversal stability, and the Void Emperor's long-term strategy to collapse realities into a controllable singularity. Kronos Ocasio, Nally interjected with observations from his encounters with the Void Walkers, while Drive. Maxwell correlated the information with initiative research. The holographic systems displayed Lyra's explanet, ions in visual form, vast cosmic structures, the web of interconnected realities, and the increasing points of contact between universes that shouldn't be touching. Our mathematics predicted something like this, Drive. Maxwell noted, manipulating the display to overlay initiative data with Lyra's models. But we lack the theoretical framework to understand its cause or potential remedies. Even with this knowledge, practical countermeasures remain challenging, Lyra acknowledged. The forces driving convergence have been accumulating for millennia. Opposing them requires power few entities possess. Entities like Kronos, Chambers surmised, glancing toward him. Entities like Kronos, Lyra confirmed, properly guided and supported. Which is where you come in, Dr. Maxwell concluded. Precisely. Lyra inclined her head. The Celestial Pantheon maintains balance rather than directly intervening in mortal affairs. Kronos represents an exception, a bridge between cosmic power and human perspective. My role is to ensure that bridge functions effectively. Chambers leaned back, fingers steepled in thought. While I appreciate the cosmic context, my immediate concern remains Earth's security. These breaches have already cost thousands of lives. If they're increasing in frequency and severity, we need practical defensive measures now, not just metaphysical understanding. A fair assessment, Lyra acknowledged. To that end, I propose a partnership. Your organization provides local knowledge and scientific expertise. Kronos and I contribute cosmic awareness and intervention capabilities. Together, we develop strategies to protect this reality while addressing the larger convergence crisis. What assurances do we have that your interests align with Earth's protection? One of Chambers' advisors asked, speaking for the first time. These cosmic entities you represent, do they value human life? A legitimate question, Lyra replied, unfazed. The Celestial Pantheon values the multiverse's diversity and complexity. Humanity represents a unique evolutionary path we would prefer to preserve. However, our primary objective remains multiversal stability. Individual realities may sometimes be sacrificed for the greater balance. The brutal honesty silenced the room momentarily. That's not going to happen, Kronos stated firmly, breaking the tension. All eyes turned toward him. I was human before I was, whatever I am now. I still remember what that means. If working with the Celestial Pantheon means sacrificing Earth, then the partnership ends there. Lyra studied him with an unreadable expression. Your attachment to your birth reality is expected, if potentially limiting. However, the choice may not be so binary. Saving this Earth and preventing convergence need not be mutually exclusive goals. Glad we agree, Kronos replied, meeting her ancient gaze steadily. Something shifted in Lyra's expression. Respect, perhaps, or recalibration. Human perspective remains strongly intact. The Pantheon will find this interesting. I find it reassuring. Drive. Maxwell interjected, her eyes on Kronos. Cosmic power with human priorities is exactly what Earth needs right now. Before the discussion could continue, alarms blared throughout the facility. Displays shifted automatically to emergency status, showing multiple alert indicators across the globe. Not more breaches, Chambers said, rising quickly. Different signature. Drive. Maxwell reported, examining the data streams. Not void energy. This is elemental in nature. Her eyes widened. Massive elemental disruption centered on New Bellwood, spreading outward. Temperature extremes, electrical disturbances, gravitational anomalies. The remnants of yesterday's breach, Kronos realized. When I forced it closed, the energies must have destabilized the elemental balance of the area. Unexpected but not surprising, Lyra observed. Chaos creates ripples, particular. When wielded by one still learning control. People are dying. Drive. Maxwell cut in, focused on practical concerns. New Bellwood's environmental systems are failing. Temperature spikes of over 50 degrees in some sectors. Dropping below freezing in others. Electrical grid in complete failure. Chambers immediately shifted to crisis management. Deploy emergency response teams. Coordinate evacuation of affected areas. Dr. Maxwell, what's the projected spread? Accelerating exponentially, she reported grimly. At current rates, the elemental disruption will engulf the entire eastern seaboard within 6 hours. We need to stabilize it at the source, Lyra stated. Kronos' energy created this disturbance, it can also resolve it. Can you teleport us there? Dr. Maxwell asked Kronos directly. Us, he echoed, surprised. I need to collect data on site, she explained pragmatically. And you might need scientific perspective to complement divine guidance. The slight he's, itation before, divine, revealed her continuing adjustment to cosmic realities. I can transport both of you, Kronos confirmed, the emerald symbol on his wrist pulsing steadily as power gathered. Dr. Maxwell, Chambers began, concern evident. With respect, Director, we don't have time for debate, she interrupted. The elemental disruption is unprecedented. I need direct observations to formulate an effective response. Chambers conceded with a brief nod. Regular updates. Full hazard protocols. Understood. She moved to stand beside Kronos, professional determination overriding any apprehension about instantaneous transportation through dimensional space. Lyra joined them, her form subtly shifting as she prepared for transit, attire transforming into something more functional, prismatic energies gathering around her. Focus on the epicenter, she instructed Kronos. Your connection to the disturbance will guide your teleportation more accurately than coordinates. Kronos nodded, extending his awareness toward New Bellwood. The elemental disruption registered as a psychic beacon, chaotic energy patterns that resonated with his own transformed consciousness. He reached out, pulling reality around the three of them like a cloak being folded. The transition happened in an eye blink. One moment they stood in the secure briefing room, the next, they materialized in the heart of catastrophe. New Bellwood's central plaza had transformed into elemental chaos. The air itself seemed fractured, patches of scorching heat adjacent to zones of biting cold, localized whirlwinds forming and dissolving randomly. Gravity fluctuating so that loose objects occasionally drifted upward before crashing down again. The ground beneath their feet shifted between states, sometimes solid, sometimes semi-fluid. Occasionally vibrating with seismic energy. Fascinating. Drive. Maxwell breathed, immediately activating multiple scanning devices attached to her tactical gear. Complete elemental destabilization. The very atomic structure of matter is oscillating between states. This is beyond mere physical disruption, Lyra observed, her eyes perceiving spectra invisible to humans. He breach created a wound in reality's fundamental structure. Elemental forces are bleeding through from adjacent dimensional planes. Can we close it? Kronos asked, studying the churning maelstrom of energies. Not like the void breaches, Lyra cautioned. This requires rebalancing rather than sealing. The elements must be harmonized, not simply forced apart. Dr. Maxwell's scanner beeped urgently. The disruption has a pattern. She displayed a complex waveform. It's oscillating through elemental states in a predictable sequence, though the transitions are becoming faster and more violent. If we could counterphase the oscillations, Kronos suggested, drawing on scientific knowledge retained from his human existence. Precisely, Lyra agreed, surprising both of them with her immediate grasp of the concept. Harmony requires understanding the underlying pattern, then introducing counterbalancing forces at precisely the right moments. I can track the pattern, drive, Maxwell offered, adjusting her instruments. But influencing elemental forces at this scale would require a god of chaos and transformation, Kronos finished. Guided by a goddess of harmony. Indeed, Lyra's expression held new respect. Your human scientific understanding complements your divine power effectively. Tell me what to do, Kronos said to both women, emerald energy already gathering around his hands. Dr. Maxwell projected the oscillation pattern into the air between them. The disruption cycles through 5 elemental phases: earth, water, fire, air, and a 5th state my instruments can't properly categorize. Quintessence, Lyra supplied, the binding force between elemental states. Mortals rarely perceive it directly. Each phase peaks approximately 11 seconds before transitioning. Drive. Maxwell continued, professional focus overriding metaphysical curiosity. The cycle completion rate is accelerating. We need to introduce a stabilizing counter rhythm. I need to be at the center, Kronos determined. Studying the churning energies. Too dangerous. Drive. Maxwell objected immediately. The elemental concentration there would tear normal matter apart. Fortunately, I'm not normal matter anymore. Kronos stepped forward, feeling the elemental forces pulling at his transformed body. Unlike physical matter, his new form adapted instinctively, resonating with the chaotic energies rather than being destroyed by them. Wait, Lyra cautioned, placing a hand on his arm. Where their skin touched, prismatic light flowed into the emerald energy surrounding him. You'll need harmonic guidance. Your chaos will exacerbate the disruption without proper counterbalance. What do you suggest? Lyra's expression became solemn. A temporary merge of our divine aspects. I channel harmony through your chaos, creating a stabilizing resonance. Is that allowed? Kronos asked, remembering her comments about Pantheon protocols. Technically no, she admitted. But circumstances justify exception. Quote, will it hurt? He asked, only half joking. Profoundly, she confirmed without humor. Divine essence was not meant to intermingle so directly. But it is necessary. Dr. Maxwell interrupted, her scanner flashing warning signals. Whatever you're planning, do it quickly. The oscillation rate just doubled. We have minutes before the disruption reaches critical instability. Kronos met Lyra's ancient eyes. Let's do it. She nodded once, then placed both hands on his shoulders. Focus your consciousness on the emerald symbol. It represents your divine core. I will establish the connection there. As Kronos concentrated on the symbol embedded in his wrist, Lyra began to change. Her human disguise melted away, revealing her true form, a being composed of crystalline light. Faceted like a diamond with countless surfaces that reflected and refracted reality itself. The sight should have been impossible for his mind to process, yet his transformed consciousness adapted. Perceiving her true nature without breaking, prismatic energy flowed from her into him, following channels created by his focus. Where emerald chaos and crystalline harmony met, pain flared, not physical but existential, as fundamental aspects of reality grated against each other within a single vessel. Hold the connection, Lyra's voice resonated directly in his mind. Lo the patterns to interweave without attempting to control them. Kronos gritted teeth that weren't entirely physical anymore as divine energies surged through him. The emerald symbol on his wrist flared blindingly, sending tendrils of combined power throughout his form. Where chaos and harmony balanced, a new energy emerged, neither green nor prismatic but something else entirely, a color that existed between established spectra. Now, Lyra commanded, her consciousness partially merged with his. Move to the epicenter. Fighting against elemental forces that intensified with each step, Kronos pushed toward the heart of the disruption. The ground beneath him liquefied, then crystallized, then became gaseous before solidifying again. Air alternately burned his lungs and froze them. Eel gravity pulled from multiple directions simultaneously. Dr. Maxwell tracked his progress through her instruments, unable to approach further without protection. The pattern is accelerating. Whatever you're doing, it needs to happen in the next 60 seconds. At the disruption's core, Reality itself seemed to shatter and reform continuously, fragments of dimensional barriers flickering in and out of existence. Kronos could perceive the wound now, a tear in the fundamental fabric that allowed elemental planes to bleed into physical reality. We must establish the counter rhythm precisely as the cycle reaches quintessence phase. Lyra instructed within their partial merge. Your chaos must be precisely channeled through my harmonic structure. How exactly do I do that? Kronos asked, still struggling to control the combined divine energies surging through him. You don't, Lyra replied. You surrender to it. Chaos cannot be controlled, only channeled. Trust the process. Surin. Daring control went against every instinct Ben Tennyson had developed through years of wielding the Omnitrix. Precision and discipline had defined his mastery of alien forms. But Kronos wasn't merely Ben anymore. And chaos wasn't merely a power but his fundamental nature. 3 seconds to quintessence phase. Doctor. Maxwell called from the perimeter, her voice barely audible through the elemental maelstrom. Kronos stopped fighting. The emerald energy surged, no longer constrained by his attempts to direct it. Lyra's harmonic essence provided structure without limitation, guiding rather than controlling. Their combined power expanded outward in perfect synchronization with the disruption cycle. For one breathtaking moment, Kronos perceived reality as gods did, not as fixed structures but as flowing patterns of energy and potential, constantly creating and destroying itself in perfect balance. The elemental disruption wasn't chaos but merely an interrupted pattern seeking restoration. Through their merged consciousness, he and Lyra wove a counter-rhythm, chaos creating infinite variations that harmony organized into sustainable patterns. Where elemental forces clashed destructively, they introduced resonances that transformed conflict into complement. The disruption responded immediately. Violent transitions slowed, extremes moderated, patterns stabilized. The wound in reality's fabric began to heal, not sealed by force but regenerating naturally as elemental balance returned. It's working, Dr. Maxwell confirmed, excitement breaking through scientific detachment. Element Al oscillations decreasing by 30%, 50%, stabilizing. As the crisis subsided, maintaining the divine merge became increasingly difficult. Lyra began withdrawing her consciousness, carefully disentangling their essences to avoid further disruption. The separation brought fresh pain, a sensation of being torn in half despite having been whole before the merger. When the connection finally broke completely, Kronos staggered, suddenly alone in his consciousness again. The absence felt strange after such profound communion, leaving him momentarily disoriented. The elemental balance is restoring, Lyra stated, her form resolidifying into human appearance. If she experienced similar discomfort from their separation, she concealed it perfectly. The natural compensatory mechanisms of reality can manage the remaining fluctuations. Dr. Maxwell approached cautiously, scanners confirming the danger had passed. Remarkable, she breathed, studying the readings. Complete harmonic restoration of elemental forces. The disruption's epicenter is now more stable than surrounding areas. She looked between them with undisguised scientific fascination. What exactly did you do? Applied divine intervention. Lyra replied simply. Kronos provided the transformative energy necessary to reorganize elemental patterns. I supplied the harmonic structure to guide that reorganization. The scientific applications are staggering. Drive. Maxwell mused, already considering implications. If we could develop technology that mimics even a fraction of this effect. Such technology would be dangerous in mortal hands, Lyra cautioned. Elemental manipulation at this scale requires wisdom accumulated through eons of existence. With respect, Drive, Maxwell countered, Huma, Nidhi can't rely solely on divine intervention during future crises. We need our own defensive capabilities. Both perspectives have merit, Kronos interjected, feeling strange advocating middle ground between human and divine viewpoints. Dr. Maxwell, your science helped identify the pattern we needed to counter. Lyra, your harmonic guidance made my power effective rather than destructive. Neither approach alone would have succeeded. Quote, both women regarded him with surprise. Drive. Maxwell because a being of his power acknowledged human science's value, Lyra because a newly ascended god demonstra. Wisdom typically acquired over millennia. Perhaps, Lyra conceded with unexpected grace, there is potential for carefully guided collaboration. We should return to Quantum Point, Drive, Maxwell suggested, activating her communicator to update Director Chambers. The data we've collected needs thorough analysis. As they prepared to teleport, Kronos noticed something strange at the edge of his perception. Where the elemental disruption had been most intense, a small anomaly remained, a pinpoint of energy unlike the surrounding patterns. "Wait," he said, moving toward it. "Something's not right." The anomaly pulsed as he approached, responding to his presence. Unlike the chaotic disruption they'd just resolved, this energy signature appeared deliberate, a structured pattern rather than random fluctuation. "Interesting," Lyra observed, following his gaze. "This does not match elemental discharge patterns." Dr. Maxwell scanned the anomaly, brow furrowing. "It's emitting a Quantum signature I've never encountered before. Almost like a beacon," Kronos finished, instinct providing the answer. "Someone deliberately left this here. Or something." Lyra's expression darkened. The elemental disruption may not have been merely aftereffect from closing the breach. It could have been engineered, a test of response capabilities. "You think someone triggered this intentionally?" Dr. Maxwell asked, alarm evident. "The Void Emperor employs many strategies," Lyra replied. "Direct assault is merely one approach. Creating situations that reveal defensive capabilities provides valuable intelligence. So we just showed our hand," Kronos realized. "Perhaps." Lyra studied the beacon carefully. "Though this signature doesn't match Void Emperor methodology. This is something else." Kronos reached toward the anomaly, drawn by instinct. The moment his fingers touched the energy point, images flashed through his mind. Coordinates, mathematical formulas, fragments of AL. Language he somehow understood despite never having encountered it before. "It's an invitation," he stated, withdrawing his hand. "Or a challenge. From someone called the Quantum Assembly." "The Quantum Assembly," Dr. Maxwell repeated. "I've never heard of such an organization." "They're not from this reality," Lyra explained, expression thoughtful. "The Assembly exists across multiple universes, monitoring convergence effects and collecting data. They rarely interact directly with affected realities. Until now, apparently," Kronos noted. "The beacon contained coordinates, a space station, positioned at some kind of dimensional intersection point. They want us to meet them there. This could be valuable." Drive, Maxwell suggested. "An organization with multiverse-spanning resources and knowledge about convergence would be a powerful ally. Or they seek to manipulate events for their own purposes," Lyra cautioned. "The Assembly claims scientific objectivity, but they have their own agenda regarding convergence. Either way, we need more information," Kronos decided. "The beacon was keyed to my energy signature specifically. They want me, not just any representative. I shall inform Director Chambers before we proceed further." Drive, Maxwell said, already composing a message on her communicator. "This has significant strategic implications." "The invitation appears time-sensitive," Lyra noted. "The beacon's energy is already degrading. The dimensional window they've opened for contact will not remain stable indefinitely." Dr. Maxwell finished her communication and looked up. "Chambers authorizes preliminary contact but advises extreme caution. The initiative needs allies against these threats, but not at the cost of compromising Earth's security." "I'll go alone," Kronos suggested. "Less risk that way." "Absolutely not." Drive, Maxwell objected immediately. "We need scientific documentation of this encounter. The potential knowledge gain is too significant to miss. And you require divine perspective to navigate Assembly politics," Lyra added firmly. "They respect power hierarchies. Appearing without proper entourage would diminish your position in negotiations." "Entourage," Kronos repeated, amusement briefly overtaking concern. "Is that what you two are?" "I prefer essential strategic advisors." Drive, Maxwell replied with unexpected dry humor. "The Assembly will recognize me," Lyra noted. "My presence validates your status within the Pantheon hierarchy. Dr. Maxwell's presence demonstrates your connection to this reality's indigenous authorities. Both strengthen your negotiating position." "When you put it that way, how can I refuse?" Kronos conceded. "But we proceed carefully. At the first sign of deception or danger, I'm teleporting us back immediately." Both women nodded agreement, though Lyra added, "The Assembly operates in spaces between realities. Teleportation there functions differently. Be prepared for limitations on your abilities. Noted. Kronos focused on the coordinates implanted in his mind by the beacon. Unlike Earth locations, these existed in a dimensional framework that defied conventional spatial understanding. Yet somehow his transformed consciousness could conceptualize the position, a point where multiple reality membranes intersected without quite touching. Ready? He asked his companions. Dr. Maxwell checked her equipment one final time. As all ever be for interdimensional diplomatic contact with a mysterious multiverse organization. Your adaptability continues to impress, drive. Maxwell. Lyra observed with what might have been approval. Kronos extended his awareness beyond conventional space, feeling for the dimensional thread the beacon had illuminated. Finding it, he gathered his power. Emerald energy enveloping all three of them as reality bent and folded around their forms. The teleportation felt different this time. More resistance, as if moving through viscous fluid rather than empty space. Lyra's warning about dimensional intersection points proved accurate. His power struggled against unfamiliar physical laws that seemed to shift continuously during transit. Elati reasserted itself gradually rather than instantly. They materialized in what appeared to be an arrival chamber, a perfectly spherical room with walls that shimmered like oil on water, colors and patterns flowing continuously across the surface. No obvious doors or windows interrupted the seamless structure, yet the space didn't feel confining. The Quantum Assembly Nexus Station, Lyra identified, her posture shifting subtly as she assessed their surroundings. One of several observation points they maintain at dimensional crossroads. Dr. Maxwell immediately activated her scanning equipment, only to frown at the results. My instruments are giving contradictory readings. According to this, we're simultaneously in at least 3 distinct dimensional states. Correct. A melodic VOICE confirmed from everywhere and nowhere. The Nexus Station exists at the intersection of 17 reality membranes, allowing observation without contamination. The flowing patterns on the chamber walls coalesced, forming a humanoid shape that stepped forward into 3-dimensional space. The figure appeared feminine, composed of what looked like liquid mercury constantly reorganizing itself into a roughly human shape. Where a face would be, mathematical equations formed and reformed continuously. Welcome, Kronos, god of chaos and transformation, the figure greeted. Your ascension has generated significant interest within the assembly. We have been monitoring the dimensional ripples caused by your emergence. And you are, Kronos prompted. This interface designates as Axiom Prime, Senior Observer for Earth-adjacent realities. The figure's mercurial form rippled. I speak for the Quantum Assembly in this sector. You left a beacon in the elemental disruption, Kronos stated. Why contact me now? The convergence accelerates beyond projected parameters, Axiom Prime replied, equations shifting more rapidly across its face region. Your unexpected introduction to He cosmic hierarchy presents both complications and opportunities for established models. Models of what exactly? Dr. Maxwell asked, scientific curiosity overcoming initial caution. The Mercury figure turned toward her, appearing to notice the humans for the first time. Fascinating. You bring indigenous specimens to interdimensional negotiation. Unusual protocol for Pantheon representatives. Dr. Serena Maxwell is not a specimen, Kronos corrected firmly. She's a quantum physicist and representative of Earth's Quantum Defense Initiative. Her perspective is valuable to these discussions. Unconventional, Axiom Prime noted, Mercury form rippling in what might have been surprise. Though perhaps fitting for a chaos deity. Its attention shifted to Lyra. Harmony. The Pantheon sends its premier diplomat. This meeting carries greater significance than anticipated. The Pantheon recognizes the Assembly's role in documenting convergence phenomena, Lyra acknowledged formally. Huff, we question your continued policy of non-intervention in affected realities. Observation requires objectivity, Axiom Prime responded. Intervention compromises data integrity. People are dying, Kronos pointed out bluntly. Worlds are being destroyed while you collect data. Regrettable but necessary, the entity replied without apparent emotion. Convergence represents the most significant multiversal event in 17 billion cycles. Proper documentation ensures future stability paradigms can be established from accurate models. You're letting worlds die to improve your research papers. Dr. Maxwell asked incredulously. Axiom Prime's equations shifted into what might have been confusion. Your species' tendency to prioritize immediate preservation over long-term RSAL stability remains consistent across reality variants. Curious evolutionary trait. It's called compassion, Kronos stated. Something your assembly seems to lack. An understandable misconception, Axiom Prime responded. Unperturbed. The assembly's perspective encompasses billions of realities across trillions of years. Individual civilizational collapses register as necessary components of larger patterns. Why contact us if you're committed to non-intervention? Lyra asked, redirecting the conversation before Kronos could respond more heatedly. The Mercury figure flowed into a new configuration, more angular. Mathematical patterns growing increasingly complex. Circumstances have changed. The Void Emperor's involvement exceeds historical precedent. Multiple elder entities now actively accelerate convergence rather than merely benefiting from natural occurrence. Elder entities, Dr. Maxwell inquired. Beings that exist between realities rather than within them, Lyra explained. The Void Emperor is one such entity. There are others, each with different aspects and objectives. Their coordinated efforts suggest a fundamental shift in convergence patterns, Axiom Prime continued. Models now indicate total multiversal collapse within 7 standard cycles unless countervailing forces intervene. Total collapse, Kronos repeated. Not just affected realities but all realities. Correct. Previous convergence events remained localized, affecting reality clusters while preserving overall multiversal integrity. Current patterns indicate comprehensive structure. Raw failure across all dimensional boundaries. The implications settled heavily on all 3 visitors. Even Lyra appeared disturbed by this assessment. The Pathion's models did not predict such extensive collapse, she admitted. This suggests deliberate manipulation beyond what we've detected. Indeed, Axiom Prime's form rippled with what might have been agitation. The assembly has identified a mathematical anomaly we designate the equation, a complex multiversal constant that appears to have been artificially altered. This alteration accelerates convergence beyond natural parameters. Dr. Maxwell leaned forward. Professional interest peaked. You're suggesting someone has changed a fundamental mathematical constant affecting multiple realities simultaneously. That should be impossible. Highly improbable but evidently achievable, Axiom Prime corrected. Our models indicate such manipulation requires coordinated action by at least 7 elder entities working in concert, a cooperation unprecedented in our historical records. Why would these entities want total multiversal collapse? Kronos asked. Wouldn't that destroy them too? Elder entities experience existence differently, Lyra explained. For them, collapse represents not destruction but transformation, a reshaping of all reality according to their preferred parameters. They're not destroying the multiverse drive, Maxwell realized. They're hijacking it. An apt if simplified analogy, Axiom Prime confirmed. The resulting singularity would establish the contributing elder entities as absolute authorities over whatever reality emerges from collapse. And this is where I come in. Kronos surmised. Your ascension was unanticipated by their models, the Mercury figure explained. A new chaos. Deity emerging at precisely this juncture introduces significant uncertainty into otherwise deterministic calculations. I've always enjoyed being the monkey wrench in the bad guy's plans, Kronos noted with grim satisfaction. Ben Tennyson's personality shining through the divine consciousness. Your intervention potential is indeed substantial, Axiom Prime acknowledged. However, effective application requires specific knowledge and resources. The assembly proposes an exchange. What kind of exchange? Lyra asked cautiously. Information for information. Access for access. The Mercury figure's equations rearranged into complex proofs. The assembly possesses detailed models of convergence patterns, including projected breach points and elder entity movement across dimensional boundaries. We offer this intelligence in exchange for direct observational access to Kronos' unique energy signature. You want to study me, Kronos translated. Affirmative. Your transformation from mortal to deity occurred through unprecedented mechanisms. The Omnitrix technology combined with Chronosapian temporal energy created a divine ascension pathway previously theoretical. This data holds significant value for understanding reality transformation processes. Dr. Maxwell stepped forward. Any exchange of information needs to include practical defense strategies for Earth. Theoretical understanding doesn't help if our reality collapses before we can apply it. A reasonable addendum, Axiom Prime conceded after brief calculation. The assembly can provide dimensional stabilization. N equations applicable to your current technology level. Implementation would require significant resources but remains within your civilization's capabilities. And what exactly does observational access to Kronos entail? Lyra inquired, divine protectiveness evident in her tone. Non-invasive quantum resonance mapping, the entity clarified. No physical samples required, merely permission to record energy patterns during active manifestation of his powers. Kronos considered the proposal. The assembly's clinical approach to multiversal disaster disturbed him, yet their information LD prove crucial to understanding and potentially preventing convergence. His instincts, both human and divine, suggested the entity wasn't being entirely forthcoming, but outright deception seemed unlikely given Lyra's presence. I'll agree to limited observation under conditions we establish, he decided. In exchange for complete access to your convergence models and practical defense technology. Applicable to Earth's current situation. Acceptable parameters, Axiom Prime confirmed, Mercury form stabilizing into a more defined shape. The assembly will prepare relevant data packets for transfer to your indigenous technology. It gestured toward Drive, Maxwell's equipment. Before we proceed further, Lyra interjected, Kronos should understand the full significance of the quantum equation. The assembly has not explained its origins or why alteration became possible now. The Mercury figure paused, equations briefly freezing before resuming at accelerated pace. That information exceeds current exchange parameters. No, Kronos stated firmly. Full disclosure or no deal. If I'm central to countering this threat, I need complete understanding, not carefully curated information packets. Axiom Prime's form rippled extensively, suggesting internal consultation with unseen authorities. After several moments, it reformed with noticeably different equation patterns. The assembly acknowledges your position. It finally conceded. The quantum equation exists as a multiversal constant established during initial reality formation. It governs interaction between dimensional membranes, preventing unregulated contact between universes. Like a firewall between realities, Drive, Maxwell suggested, translating into terms her scientific background could conceptualize. An perfect but functionally adequate analogy, Axiom Prime allowed. This equation was partially encoded within the original Omnitrix design. Kronos stiffened in surprise. What? Azimuth of Galvan me possessed limited awareness of multiversal constants, the entity explained. The Omnitrix represented his attempt to preserve biological diversity while unknowingly reinforcing dimensional stability through quantum genetic linkages. That's why the Void Emperor recognized me, Kronos realized. Why it seemed familiar with the Omnitrix. It wasn't coincidence. Correct. Your sacrifice interrupted the initial convergence acceleration attempt. Your unexpected ascension further complicated elder entity calculations. The Omnitrix's energy signature, transformed and amplified through your divine aspect, now represents a potential vector for equation restoration. Why didn't you or the Pantheon tell me this immediately? Kronos demanded, looking between Axiom Prime and Lyra. Lyra's expression remained carefully neutral. The Pantheon operates on need-to-know principles. Information is distributed as circumstances require. Even now, transparency remains challenging for cosmic entities. Axiom Prime observed with what might have been irony. The assembly projected a 78.3% probability that full disclosure would be necessary to secure your cooperation. This conversation confirms that model. So I'm not just a random wild card, Kronos pressed. The Omnitrix connection makes me specifically dangerous to their plans. Your unique energy signature can potentially recalibrate portions of the altered equation. The entity confirmed. Though effective application requires precision beyond your current capability without significant guidance. Which is where the assembly comes in, Dr. Maxwell surmised. You need Kronos, but you need him properly directed. As does the Pantheon, Lyra acknowledged with unexpected candor. Divine power without precise application may cause more harm than benefit in this instance. Kronos absorbed this new information, feeling manipulated yet also recognizing the legitimate crisis at hand. The competing agendas surrounding him, Assembly, Pantheon, Earth's Defenders, each contained partial truths and limited perspectives. I'll work with you, he decided, addressing both Axiom Prime and Lyra, but on my terms, not yours. Earth's protection remains non-negotiable, and I expect complete information going forward, not convenient partial disclosures. The Pantheon accepts these conditions, Lyra stated after brief consideration, her formal tone suggesting she spoke with authority beyond her individual perspective. The Assembly concurs, Axiom Prime confirmed, Mercury form solidifying further. Preliminary data transfer will commence immediately. Full exchange protocols require preparation of specialized interface technologies to accommodate your unique energy signature. How long until we can begin the actual work? Dr. Maxwell asked practically. Approximately 73 of your hours, the entity replied. Assembly scientists must calibrate quantum resonance chambers to safely interact with chaos deity emanations. That's 3 days, Kronos noted. What happens with ongoing breaches and incursions during that time? The Assembly can provide interim breach prediction algorithms, Axiom Prime offered. 78% accuracy for the next 12 major incursions, allowing more effective defensive resource allocation. That would significantly improve our response capabilities, Drive. Maxwell acknowledged, clearly calculating potential benefits despite lingering suspicions. Then we have an agreement, Kronos concluded. Dr. Maxwell will coordinate data transfer for Earth's defense systems. I'll return in 3 days for the full exchange. Acceptable, Axiom Prime confirmed. This interface will facilitate immediate transfer of predictive algorithms to your technology. It gestured toward Drive, Maxwell's equipment, which began receiving data streams automatically. The download is massive, she observed, checking her systems. Terabytes of information, merely preliminary models, the entity explained. Complete datasets require dedicated quantum storage beyond your current portable capabilities. While Drive, Maxwell managed the data transfer, Axiom Prime turned its attention back to Kronos and Lyra. The Pantheon's assignment of Harmony as Guardian suggests awareness of key variables beyond assembly models, it noted. Your specific divine pairing appears statistically significant. The Pantheon has its reasons, Lyra replied noncommittally. Indeed, the Mercury figure's equations shifted into what might have been amusement. Variables beyond pure calculation often prove most determinative in multiversal events. The Assembly acknowledges this epistemological limitation. Before further discussion could develop, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station, harsh, discordant sounds that seemed to originate from multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. Axiom Prime's form destabilized momentarily, equations dissolving into chaotic patterns before reforming with evident effort. Station breach in progress, it announced, Mercury's surface rippling with agitation. Unknown entity penetrating dimensional barriers through unauthorized vectors. The Void Emperor, Kronos asked, immediately alert, negative, signature does not match known elder entities. Axiom Prime's equations shifted rapidly. Dimensional coordinates indicate origin from temporal disruption nexus designated Chronopolis. Chronopolis. Dr. Maxwell looked up from her equipment. I've never heard of it. A city that exists outside conventional time streams, Lyra explained quickly. Home to temporal engineers and chronological architects who monitor timeline stability across multiple realities. The station shuddered violently, dimensional membranes visibly stray. Ching as something forced its way through. The seamless walls of the arrival chamber suddenly fractured, a spiderweb of cracks spreading across the surface before shattering entirely to reveal swirling temporal energy beyond. Unstable breach, Axiom Prime warned. Station integrity compromised. Emergency protocols initiated. From the swirling vortex, a figure emerged, humanoid but clearly not human. With skin that shimmered like burnished copper and eyes that contained spinning clockwork mechanisms instead of pupils. Ornate temporal technology adorned its body in complex patterns, each component shifting and adjusting continuously to maintain phase with surrounding reality. Found you, the figure announced, focusing immediately on Kronos. Timeline collision imminent. Chronopolis compromised. The convergence accelerates beyond projected parameters. Who are you? Kronos demanded, emerald energy gathering around his hands defensively. Zara Kronos, temporal engineer first class, the figure introduced briskly. And we have approximately 17 seconds before this station suffers catastrophic dimensional collapse. Decisions quickly, please. As if confirming her warning, the station shuddered again. More violently. Reality itself seemed to waver around them, solid matter becoming temporarily translucent before resolidifying in slightly different configurations. She speaks truth, Axiom Prime confirmed. Mercury form beginning to lose cohesion. Unknown temporal disruption cascading through dimensional anchors. Station collapse probability exceeds 97%. We need to leave, Lyra stated decisively. Now, take me with you, Zara Kronos demanded. Chronopolis data regarding convergence timeline manipulation is essential to understanding the threat pattern. How do we know we can trust you? Dr. Maxwell challenged, hastily securing her equipment as the station continued to destabilize around them. You don't, the temporal engineer acknowledged bluntly. But I've seen 374 potential futures resulting from this moment. In only 17 do any of us survive the next week. All 17 require cooperation. Another violent shudder rocked the station. Sections of floor began dissolving into dimensional static, reality itself breaking down at the molecular level. Decision time's up, Kronos announced, ending his awareness to prepare for teleportation. To his alarm, dimensional coordinates refused to stabilize, the station's position shifting continuously between realities as its anchors failed. Conventional teleportation impossible during dimensional flux, Zara stated, reading his expression. But chaos deities can navigate instability. Focus on pattern disruption rather than coordinate stability. How would you know that? Lyra asked sharply. Temporal engineer, Zara reminded her impatiently. I've observed this moment from multiple timeline perspectives. Now focus. With no better options, Kronos followed her suggestion, shifting his awareness from fixed points to flow patterns. The station's dissolution suddenly appeared not as random destruction but as a specific sequence of reality transitions. By focusing on the pattern itself rather than stable coordinates, he could potentially ride the dissolution wave back to a stable reality. Everyone hold on, he instructed, earring emerald energy around the group as the station began its final collapse. Assembly data transfer incomplete, drive. Maxwell noted with professional frustration even as she gripped his arm. The assembly will persist, Axiom Prime assured them, Mercury form now barely maintaining coherence. Alternative contact protocols exist. Proceed with evacuation. With a final violent surge, the station's reality membrane ruptured completely. Dimensional energy cascaded through the chamber, dissolving everything it touched into component particles. Kronos wrapped chaos energy around his companions, surrendering to the dissolution pattern rather than fighting it. The last thing he observed before the station disappeared entirely was Axiom Prime's Mercury form flowing into a symbol he somehow recognized, not with sight but with some deeper awareness. A message or warning encoded not in language but in mathematical relationships. Then they were falling through dimensional space, riding waves of collapsing reality toward an uncertain destination. Kronos focused entirely on maintaining their cohesion as fundamental forces tore at the energy cocoon surrounding them. Pathway unstable, Zara shouted above the dimensional turbulence. Chaos signature fluctuating. Help him, Lyra commanded her, divine authority cutting through chaos. Your temporal technology, synchronize with his energy pattern. The temporal engineer complied without argument, activating components embedded in her copper-toned skin. Clockwork mechanisms whirred to life, generating a field that somehow steadied the chaotic energies Kronos was channeling. Temporal anchor established, Zara confirmed. Trajectory stabilizing toward nearest viable reality membrane. Prepare for traumatic transition. Brace yourselves, Kronos warned as he sensed a dimensional barrier approaching rapidly. Reality reasserted itself with brutal force, like hitting concrete after falling from orbit. They materialized in what appeared to be a public park, impact cratering the ground beneath them. Kronos absorbed most of the dimensional recoil, his divine form adapting to the strain, but his human companions were thrown violently in different directions. As the dust settled, Kronos quickly assessed their situation. The park looked normal enough. Trees, paths, decorative water features, but subtle wrongness permeated everything. Colors seemed slightly shifted from expected spectra, gravity felt minutely stronger, and the sky above held an unsettling purplish tinge. Where are we? He asked, helping drive Maxwell to her EET while scanning for Lyra and their unexpected companion. Not your Earth, Zara replied, already checking her temporal equipment for damage. Dimensional coordinates indicate parallel reality. Day. Ignatian Earth 783 according to assembly classification. How far from our reality? Dr. Maxwell inquired, professional curiosity immediately engaging despite their situation. 17-dimensional membranes removed. The temporal engineer specified, significant historical and physical divergence from your baseline. Most notably, this Earth never experienced the Chronosapian crisis that led to Ben Tennyson's sacrifice. That revelation hit Chronos like a physical blow. Ben Tennyson exists in this reality. Existed, Zara corrected dispassionately. Historical records indicate he died approximately 30 years ago in this timeline. Natural causes after full human lifespan. Before Chronos could process the implications, Lyra rejoined them, her human disguise slightly disheveled but otherwise intact. We cannot remain here, she stated without preamble. This reality exists too far from your assigned protection zone, Chronos. Prolonged presence will strain your connection to your anchor universe. She's right, Zara confirmed, consulting readings on a device embedded in her forearm. Divine entities experience degradation when operating across multiple dimensional boundaries without proper anchoring protocols. Can you get us home? Dr. Maxwell asked Chronos directly. He reached out with his awareness, feeling for the dimensional pathways that had become instinctual during teleportation. To his dismay, they felt distant and distorted, like radio signals experiencing heavy interference. Not directly, he admitted. The station collapse disrupted dimensional pathways. I need time to recalibrate my perception. Time is precisely what we lack, Zara informed them, her clockwork eyes spinning with increasing speed. Dimensional breach forming approximately 2 kilometers from our position. Void signature detected. They followed us. Dr. Maxwell asked incredulously. Unlikely, Lyra assessed. More probably this reality is experiencing the same convergence effects as yours. Incursions are occurring across all affected dimensions. This Earth has no quantum defense initiative, Zara added. No organized response to interdimensional threats. Casualty projections. Catastrophic. Chronos looked between his 3 companions, the scientist determined but out of her depth, the goddess calculating cosmic implications, and the temporal engineer assessing timeline variables. 3 perspectives, each valuable but incomplete. The weight of decision settled on him, a weight Ben Tennyson would have recognized immediately. We help them, he decided, Emera. LD energy already gathering around his hands. Then we find our way home. Local intervention risks timeline contamination, Zara cautioned, though her tone lacked conviction. This Earth's timeline, is already compromised by convergence effects, Lyra countered unexpectedly. Limited intervention to counter interdimensional threats falls within acceptable parameters. I was hoping you'd say that, Chronos admitted with a grim smile. Because I was going to help them anyway. Some things apparently transcend even godhood. Drive. Maxwell observed wryly, readying her equipment. Saving the world still comes naturally, doesn't it? Old habits, Chronos agreed, cosmic power surging through him as they moved toward the developing breach and whatever new challenges awaited on this unfamiliar Earth. In the dimensional space beyond, unseen by any of them, ancient entities observed these developments with varying reactions. Equations recalculated, probabilities shifted, and the complex CE of convergence entered a new and unexpected phase. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, the quantum equation. The breach manifested as a vertical tear in reality, jagged edges pulsing with sickly purple light. As it widened in the center of what appeared to be this Earth's version of Central Park. Around it, civilians scattered in panic, their screams carried on wind that suddenly changed direction as atmospheric pressure destabilized. Reality itself seemed to warp, trees bending at impossible angles as gravity fluctuated in proximity to the dimensional wound. Chronos moved without hesitation, emerald energy already cascading down his arms as he positioned himself between fleeing humans and the expanding breach. The familiar rush of power, both alien and increasingly natural, surged through his transformed body. Void signatures confirm elder entity influence, Zara reported clinically, clockwork eyes spinning as she analyzed the breach. pattern matches recent incursions in your native reality. Though energy concentration appears 27% higher. They're escalating. Drive, Maxwell observed, activating scanning equipment with practiced efficiency. Each breach stronger than the previous. Testing the boundaries, Lyra concluded. Her human disguise momentarily flickering as she channeled divine perception. This reality lacks effective countermeasures, making it an ideal experimental ground. The first void walkers emerged, elongated limbs and faces composed of swirling darkness. Unlike the entities Kronos had encountered on his Earth, these moved with greater coordination, almost military precision. They fanned out in strategic formation, establishing a perimeter around the breach with evident purpose. These aren't random raiders, Kronos realized, studying their movements. This is an occupation force. Confirmed, Zara stated, consulting temporal readings on her wrist device. Void walkers establishing dimensional anchor points. Preparing for sustained presence rather than temporary incursion. We need to close that breach before they complete the anchor drive. Maxwell urged, her scientific analysis immediately identifying the strategic threat. Kronos nodded, gathering chaos energy for what had become his signature attack. Before he could launch forward, however, Zara's copper hand closed around his wrist. Wait, the temporal engineer cautioned, clockwork eyes spinning rapidly. Breach configuration indicates trap parameters. Direct engagement triggers catastrophic expansion, 94% probability. Explain, Lyra demanded. They're expecting resistance, Zara elaborated, releasing Kronos' wrist to manipulate holographic temporal diagrams that sprang from her forearm device. Breach has been calibrated to absorb and redirect chaos energy. Your standard approach would amplify rather than close the portal. Dr. Maxwell stepped closer, examining Zara's projections with professional interest. She's right. These energy signatures show harmonic resonance specifically calibrated to your frequency. She glanced up at Kronos. They've adapted to your previous interventions. The Void Emperor learns quickly, Lyra observed grimly. Around the breach, Void Walkers had begun constructing what appeared to be a physical framework, impossible geometries formed from darkness-given substance. More entities continued to emerge, some carrying objects that pulsed with malevolent energy. We need a different approach, Kronos decided, studying the unfolding scenario. Zara, your temporal technology, can it affect the breach? The temporal engineer's expression shifted to something approximating respect. Potential exists. Chronosopian technology operates on different principles than chaos energy. Temporal phase disruption might destabilize their anchor points. And I can provide harmonic counterpoint to prevent catastrophic resonance, Lyra added, understanding the strategy immediately. What do you need from us? Dr. Maxwell asked Zara directly. Proximity to primary anchor nodes, the temporal engineer replied, adjusting settings on various devices embedded in her copper-toned skin. And approximately 40 seconds uninterrupted operation time. Kronos nodded, the plan forming naturally. Maxwell and I will create a diversion. Draw the walkers away from the anchor points. Lyra provides cover for Zara while she works her temporal magic. An effective distribution of our capabilities, Lyra acknowledged with a nod of approval. Not how I expected to spend my day, drive. Maxwell commented wryly, checking her weapon systems. But I've gotten used to improvisation lately. With the strategy established, they moved into position. Kronos approached from the west, deliberately projecting his chaos energy to attract attention. Dr. Maxwell circled south, her specialized weapons configured to maximum disruption rather than damage, designed to disorient rather than destroy entities that conventional firearms couldn't harm. The Void Walkers reacted immediately to Kronos' presence, multiple entities breaking from their tasks to intercept the recognized threat. Their movements suggested not just recognition but specific tactical response. They maintained distance, avoiding direct contact that had proven fatal to their kind in previous encounters. They definitely remember me, Kronos muttered, channeling energy. Differently this time, projecting it in scattered bursts that forced the walkers to divide their attention rather than concentrate their response. From the southern approach, drive, Maxwell activated our disruptor array, multiple small devices that generated competing quantum fields. The effect on the Void Walkers was immediate and dramatic. Their semi-substantial forms wavered, coordination faltering. G's conflicting dimensional signals interrupted their connection to their home reality. The disruptors are working, she called out, deploying additional devices in a widening pattern. With the Void Walkers distracted, Zara and Lyra approached the primary anchor points, crystalline structures of solidified darkness that pulsed in sync with the breach itself. Lyra extended her divine awareness, creating a subtle harmonic field that masked their presence from the remaining guards. Dimensional perceptual shift established, she informed Zara quietly. We appear as expected background fluctuations to their senses. You have your 40 seconds. The temporal engineer wasted no time, copper fingers moving with inhuman precision as she manipulated devices that seemed to phase between different states of reality. Clockwork components extended from her forearms, connecting to form an elaborate mechanism that emitted pulses of golden energy. Chronosapian time dilation field activating, she announced, voice dropping to a focused monotone, targeting temporal substrate of interdimensional anchors. Breach stability compromised in 3, 2, 1. Golden energy enveloped the nearest anchor point, which immediately began to vibrate at increasing frequency. The crystalline darkness fractured, cracks spreading across its surface before shattering completely with a sound like reality itself breaking. The effect cascaded to connected anchor points, each collapsing in sequence. The breach responded violently, edges pulsing erratically as stability failed. Void Walkers abandoned their attack on Kronos and Dr. Maxwell, rushing back toward the deteriorating portal with evident alarm. It's working, Dr. Maxwell called out, continuing to deploy disruptors to hamper the entity's movements. Too effectively, Zara cautioned, clockwork eyes spinning frantically. Breach collapse accelerating beyond controlled parameters. Catastrophic dimensional recoil imminent. What does that mean? Kronos demanded, already moving toward his companions. It means run, the temporal engineer shouted, abandoning her usual clinical tone. Now, the warning came barely in time. The BR, each collapsed not gradually but catastrophically, imploding inward before exploding outward in a shockwave of dimensional energy. Kronos reached Lyra and Zara first, throwing up a barrier of chaos energy to shield them from the blast. Dr. Maxwell, further away, dove behind a concrete structure moments before the wave hit. The dimensional shockwave distorted everything it touched, trees twisted into impossible shapes. Water froze in midair, stone briefly liquefied before resolidifying in warped configurations. For several heartbeats, reality itself seemed uncertain which laws of physics to obey. When the distortion finally settled, Kronos lowered his protective barrier. Everyone all right, functional, Zara confirmed, already examining her temporal devices for damage. Unharmed, Lyra added, her divine form briefly visible beneath her human disguise before stabilizing again. Dr. Maxwell, Kronos called out, not seeing her immediately. Here, she responded, emerging from behind the now melted concrete structure. A thin trickle of blood ran from her temple, but she appeared otherwise intact. That was intense. Uncontrolled breach collapse, Zara explained, scanning the area with her clockwork eyes. Void Walkers completely eliminated, local dimensional integrity stabilizing, though residual distortions will persist for approximately 12 hours. Dr. Maxwell approached, professional composure already reasserted despite her injury. The disruptors worked better than expected against the walkers. Worth noting for future encounters. Your adaptation of quantum field technology is impressive for your civilization's development stage, Zara acknowledged with what might have been respect. The initiative employs you well. Speaking of the initiative, Kronos interjected. We need to find a way back to our reality. This Earth is safe for now, but our own still faces multiple threats. Lyra nodded agreement. The dimensional pathways remain disrupted from the assembly station collapse. But alternatives exist. Chronopolis, Zara stated, adjusting settings on her wrist device. My arrival created a temporary pathway between your reality and the temporal nexus. With proper calibration, we can utilize that connection to return. You can get us home through Chronopolis. Dr. Maxwell asked, scientific curiosity momentarily overriding practical concerns. Not directly, the temporal engineer clarified. Chronopolis exists outside conventional space-time. We would transit through the city to reach your reality coordinates. A detour through the city of time itself, Kronos mused. Memories of Paradox and his cryptic explanations surfacing from Ben Tennyson's past. Why do I feel like this comes with complications? Zara's clockwork eyes spun briefly before settling. Because you retain sufficient intelligence despite divine transformation, she replied with unexpected directness. Chronopolis visitation by non-temporal entities requires special dispensation. Our arrival will trigger administrative complications. Administrative. Dr. Maxwell echoed skeptically. Chronopolis operates under strict governance, Lyra explained. Quote, the Time Council maintains multiversal temporal stability through rigidly enforced protocols. Unauthorized arrivals face severe consequences. You're saying we'll be arrested, Kronos translated. Quote, temporarily detained pending disposition evaluation, Zara corrected, the distinction apparently meaningful to her. As a registered temporal engineer, I can invoke emergency transit protocols. Detention would be brief. Define. Brief. In a city outside normal time, drive. Maxwell requested dryly. Zara considered this with evident calculation. From subjective perspective, approximately 6 to 8 hours. From your native reality's timeframe, likely milliseconds. Acceptable risk given our limited options, Lyra concluded. The Divine Pantheon maintains diplomatic relations with Chronopolis governance. My presence should expedite proceedings. Kronos looked between his companions, each bringing unique perspective and capability to their impromptu team. Despite the circumstances, he felt an unexpected appreciation for how quickly they'd adapted to working together. Chronopolis it is, he decided. Zara, what do you need to establish the pathway? The temporal engineer extended her copper-toned arms. Clockwork components reconfiguring into an elaborate device. Temporal beacon activation requires significant energy input. Your chaos signature can power the transit if properly channeled. Like jumping a car battery, drive. Maxwell suggested with a hint of humor. An imprecise but conceptually adjacent analogy, Zara acknowledged. Kronos, place your hands here and here. He indicated connection points on the device. Channel energy gradually. Excessive surge risks temporal displacement. As Kronos positioned his hands on the indicated points, emerald energy began flowing into Zara's temporal technology. The sensation was strange, not like powering the Omnitrix or even closing dimensional breaches. This energy transfer felt more structured, his chaos conforming to precise patterns dictated by the clockwork mechanisms. Fascinating. Drive, Maxwell observed, scanning the process with her instruments. Your energy signature is adapting to temporal frequency requirement, hence without losing its fundamental properties. Chaos contains all possibilities, Lyra noted, including order when properly directed. The clockwork device hummed with increasing intensity, gold, and light pulsing at the connection points where Kronos' emerald energy entered the system. Around them, reality began to waver. Not breaking as with a breach, but softening at the edges, becoming malleable. Chronopolis pathway initializing, Zara reported, clockwork eyes spinning rapidly. Temporal coordinates locked, maintaining stability at 93% probability. Everyone stay close, Kronos instructed, continuing to channel power into the device. If this works like teleportation, the transition could be disorienting. Unlike the violent displacement of the assembly station, collapse or the controlled teleportation Kronos had performed previously, the transition to Chronopolis unfolded gradually. Reality seemed to dissolve around them, colors bleeding into one another, solid objects becoming translucent. Sound stretching into elongated echoes. The sensation wasn't painful but profoundly strange, like experiencing time itself as a physical dimension. The park around them faded completely, replaced by golden light that wrapped around their forms like liquid metal. For a moment, they existed everywhere and nowhere, suspended between moments rather than locations. Reality reasserted itself with jarring abruptness. They stood in a vast circular chamber constructed from what appeared to be crystallized time itself, walls that flowed like water yet remained perfectly solid. Ceiling that shifted between configurations without ever moving, floor that captured and preserved footprints momentarily before reabsorbing them into pristine smoothness. Surrounding them on all sides, figures in elaborate chronological regalia observed their arrival with expressions ranging from alarm to curiosity. Humanoid but clearly not human, each wore technology similar to Zara's but more elaborate. More integrated with their copper-toned forms. Unauthorized temporal transit detected, announced a voice that seemed to echo from both past and future simultaneously. Dimensional breach protocols activated. Intruders will submit to temporal stasis pending investigation. Zara stepped forward, clockwork eyes spinning in complex patterns that clearly communicated information beyond verbal language. Temporal Engineer Zara Kronos, designation Alpha 7 Delta Null. Emergency Transit Protocol invoked under Section 12 of the Temporal Preservation Mandate. The lead figure, distinguished by more elaborate chronological regalia and eyes that contained entire galaxies in miniature, regarded her with evident skepticism. Engineer Kronos, your assigned observatio. N parameters did not include transit authorization for extratemporal entities. Circumstances necessitated adaptation, she replied formally. The convergence accelerates beyond projected parameters. Direct intervention became required to preserve primary timeline integrity. At the mention of convergence, murmurs rippled through the assembled temporal authorities, not spoken words but fluctuati. Ons in the chronological field surrounding them. You bring a chaos deity to Chronopolis, the lead figure observed, galaxies spinning in their eyes as they studied Kronos. The implications are significant. I bring potential salvation, Zara corrected with unexpected boldness. The divine entity designated Kronos possesses unique capability to counter convergence acceleration. His chaos C.G. nature interacts with the quantum equation in ways our models failed to predict. The lead figure's expression shifted subtly. You exceeded your authority, Engineer Kronos. I fulfilled my purpose, she countered. Timeline preservation supersedes procedural adherence when extinction-level events threaten temporal continuity. As this exchange continued, Kronos studied their surroundings more carefully. Beyond the immediate chamber, he could perceive Chronopolis itself, a metropolis that defied conventional understanding, architecture that existed in multiple states simultaneously, streets that led to different eras as easily as different locations. Residents moved with the precision of temporal experts, their very existence calibrated to maintain perfect harmony with the flowing timestream. It's beautiful, drive, Maxwell whispered beside him, scientific wonder overriding caution. A civilization built entirely around temporal mechanics. The physics alone must be beyond conventional understanding, Lyra completed, her divine perception allowing deeper appreciation than human senses could manage. Chronopolis exists as both city and concept, a physical manifestation of time's self-organization. Their quiet conversation was interrupted as the lead temporal authority reached a decision. The Council acknowledges emergency protocols, they announced, galaxy eyes fixing on each visitor in turn. Temporary dispensation granted for presence within Chronopolis. Engineer Kronos will assume responsibility for extratemporal visitors. Full briefing required within one standard temporal unit. Zara inclined her head in formal acknowledgement. Accepted. With that declaration, the tension in the chamber dissipated. The assembled authorities withdrew, golden light SWI, RLING around their forms as they transitioned elsewhere without physically moving. That went better than statistical probability suggested, Zara observed once they were alone in the chamber. Your presence affected council calculation. Goddess. She nodded toward Lyra. The divine pantheon and Chronopolis maintain necessary diplomatic relations, Lyra confirmed. Though such consideration extends temporarily. We should proceed with your briefing without delay. Agreed. The temporal engineer gestured toward an archway that hadn't existed moments before. This way. My research facility contains secure briefing capabilities. As they followed Zara through the archway, Chronopolis revealed itself more fully. The city defied conventional description, buildings that seemed to age and rejuvenate continuously. Streets that sometimes ran vertically without affecting pedestrians, orientation, vehicles that occasionally phased through solid objects by briefly existing in different moments. Citizens went about activities that made sense only in context of temporal mechanics, their copper-toned bodies housing technology that allowed them to perceive and manipulate time itself. This is incredible, drive, Maxwell commented, professional composure temporarily overwhelmed by scientific wonder. An entire civilization built around temporal engineering. Chronopolis was not constructed but evolved, Zara corrected, leading them along pathways that occasionally rearranged themselves. From temporal nexus to interdimensional waypoint to independent city-state over approximately 7 billion years of subjective development. Quote, Yet it exists outside normal time, Kronos observed. So those 7 billion years happened simultaneously with the present moment. Zara's expression suggested approval of his understanding. Precisely. Temporal mechanics permits multiplexed existence. Chronopolis occupies all moments while maintaining subjective chronological coherence for residents. Forgive my limited mortal perspective. Dr. Maxwell interjected dryly, but if Chronopolis exists outside time, how does the convergence threaten it? Wouldn't you be insulated from multiversal collapse? The temporal engineer's clockwork eyes spun slower, suggesting consideration of how to translate complex temporal concepts into understandable terms. Chronopolis exists outside conventional time streams but remains connected to them, she explained eventually. The city anchors itself to multiple reality membranes simultaneously. If those membranes collapse, our anchors fail. Without stable reference points, Chronopolis itself would dissolve into temporal chaos. So you're directly threatened by the convergence, Kronos surmised. That explains your intervention. Partially, Zara acknowledged. Temporal engineers are also mandated to preserve key historical continuity. Your transformation represents a critical nexus point for multiversal stability. They arrived at what API read to be a standard building, at least by Chronopolis standards, its architecture merely shifting occasionally rather than continuously transforming. Inside, Zara led them to a laboratory filled with temporal technology far more advanced than anything Kronos had seen, even during Ben Tennyson's encounters with Paradox. My research facility, she explained, activating systems with precise gestures. Shielded from temporal observation, what we discuss here remains chronologically isolated. Why the secrecy? Kronos asked, immediately alert to implications. Zara's expression became grave, CL. A quirk eyes briefly freezing in position. Because Chronopolis governance is compromised. The Time Council's neutrality has been influenced. By whom? Lyra demanded, divine authority resonating in her voice. Unknown precisely, the temporal engineer admitted, but evidence suggests elder entity infiltration through chronomantic manipulation. Key decision pathways show probability distortion inconsistent with natural temporal development. You're saying someone's manipulating the timeline to influence the Council's decisions, drive. Maxwell translated, grasping implications quickly. Correct. Zara activated a holographic display showing complex temporal flowcharts. These represent natural probability distributions for Council policy decisions regarding convergence response. These additional charts appeared, overlaying the first set, show actual decision patterns over the past 17 temporal units. The difference was subtle but unmistakable to Kronos' enhanced perception. Where natural probability flowed like water finding the path of least resistance, the actual decisions followed artificial channels, too precise, too consistent to be random chance. They're being influenced to remain neutral, he realized, to observe rather than intervene. Like the assembly, drive. Maxwell added, connecting patterns. Another powerful group choosing to study the catastrophe rather than prevent it. Assessment accurate, Zara confirmed. Multiple interdimensional authorities exhibiting identical response deviation. Statistical impossibility without coordinated external influence. Lyra's expression darkened with divine concern. This suggests coordination beyond what we initially detected. The Void Emperor working with other elder entities to neutralize potency. Opposition before convergence reaches critical threshold. But why bring us here if the Council is compromised? Kronos asked Zara directly. Because Chronopolis contains what you need. The temporal engineer manipulated controls, revealing a secure chamber beyond the laboratory. Access to the temporal observatory. The name clearly held significance for Lyra, whose divine composure briefly faltered. The observatory is restricted even to Pantheon representatives. How could you possibly grant access? I cannot officially, Zara acknowledged. But security protocols contain exploitable anomalies when presented with unprecedented entity classifications. Her clockwork eyes focused on Kronos. You represent a category exception the system cannot properly process. A loophole, drive. Maxwell summarized with evident appreciation. A calculated irregularity, Zara corrected, though her tone suggested the distinction was minimal. The observatory allows direct perception of tempora. cross-sections across multiple realities simultaneously. Critical for understanding the quantum equation's current state. The quantum assembly mentioned this equation, Kronos recalled. Said it was partially encoded in the original Omnitrix. Correct, the temporal engineer confirmed. Azimuth incorporated mathematical constants he did not fully understand. Instinctive genius rather than comprehensive knowledge. The equation itself exists beyond complete comprehension by single entities. Yet the elder entities have apparently altered it. Drive. Maxwell pointed out. How? Cooperative. Manipulation across multiple access points, Zara explained, activating additional displays showing mathematical formulas of staggering complexity. Each elder entity accessing different dimensional substrates where the equation manifests physically. Kronos studied the displays, surprised to find the mathematics partially comprehensible to his transformed consciousness. It's like a distributed attack on reality's source code. An apt if simplified analogy, Zara acknowledged. The equation establishes fundamental interaction protocols between dimensional membranes. Alteration accelerates membrane deterioration, producing convergence effects, and the observatory will show us exactly how they've altered it. Dr. Maxwell asked, scientific mind immediately focusing on practical application. And when? Zara added significantly, temporal cross-sections reveal alteration sequence, critical for developing countermeasures. Then let's not waste time, Kronos decided. How do we access this observatory? The temporal engineer's clockwork eyes spun in complex patterns as she manipulated security systems. System anomaly exploitation requires precise timing. Kronos must present directly at authentication terminal when temporal shift occurs. Temporal shift. Chronopolis occasionally realigns its temporal positioning, Lyra explained. A maintenance function to prevent drift from anchor points. During realignment, security systems briefly recalibrate. The next shift occurs in approximately 12 minutes, Zara informed them, continuing preparations. We must move precisely when indicated. While they waited, Drive. Maxwell approached the mathematical displays, studying the quantum equation with evident fascination despite its complexity. Even the small portion I can comprehend is revolutionary, she noted. This makes unified field theory look like basic arithmetic. The mathematical principles alone could advance our understanding by centuries. Nold. GE without wisdom accelerates destruction, Lyra cautioned. Many civilizations collapsed after discovering portions of the equation prematurely. You sound like you're speaking from experience, Kronos observed, studying the goddess with newfound curiosity. Something like regret flickered across Lyra's perfect features. The Pantheon's role occasionally includes limitation of knowledge that reality is not prepared to contain. A necessary function some find distasteful. You mean you've actively prevented civilizations from making discoveries, Drive. Maxwell translated, scientific Princi. Pless clearly conflicting with this revelation. When necessary for multiversal stability, Lyra confirmed without apology, though subtle tension in her posture suggested personal conflict with this aspect of divine responsibility. Before this philosophical discussion could develop further, Zara's instruments chimed softly. Temporal shift commencing. Authentication window opens in 47 seconds. She led them quickly through the laboratory to a sealed entrance marked with symbols that seemed to change meaning depending on the angle from which they were viewed. Complex temporal mechanisms surrounded the doorway, occasionally phasing between different states of existence. When the symbols align in trefoil configuration, Kronos must place his hand on the central authentication panel, Zara instructed rapidly. Security protocols will attempt classification. Your unique divine mortal hybrid status should trigger exception handling routines. Should. Dr. Maxwell questioned. 92% probability. The temporal engineer clarified. Acceptable risk threshold given circumstances. The symbols began shifting more rapidly as the temporal shift progressed throughout Chronopolis. Around them, reality wavered subtly, not breaking but adjusting, like a camera refocusing. Now, Zara instructed sharply as the symbols briefly aligned. Kronos placed his hand on the authentication panel, channeling a measured amount of chaos energy into the system. The panel illuminated with golden light that quickly shifted to emerald green as it encountered his unique signature. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then the symbols rearranged themselves into entirely new configurations before the doorway simply dissolved. Authentication exception registered, announced a disembodied voice that seemed to originate from multiple timeframes simultaneously. Unknown entity classification. Defaulting to Contingency Protocol 7 Alpha. Temporary access granted pending administrative review. It worked, Drive, Maxwell remarked, sounding genuinely impressed. Administrative review will not occur until next council session, Zara explained, already leading them through the opening. By which time we will have completed our objective. Beyond the doorway lay the temporal observatory, a vast spherical chamber whose walls displayed what appeared to be living cross-sections of time streams. Countless reality threads flowed across the curved surface, each representing entire universes compressed into observable patterns. Where threads intersected, complex interactions played out in accelerated time, civilizations rising and falling in seconds, cosmic events unfolding and resolving in eye-blinks. At the chamber's center floated a control mechanism unlike a thing Kronos had seen, not physical technology but something more fundamental, constructed from crystallized time itself. It pulsed with golden light, occasionally emitting tendrils that connected to specific points on the surrounding timestream display. The observatory core, Zara identified, approaching the mechanism with evident reverence. Direct interface with the temporal substrate of reality itself. It's beautiful, Drive, Maxwell whispered, scientific detachment momentarily overwhelmed by genuine awe. Even Lyra appeared impressed, her divine perception clearly recognizing the significance of what they witnessed. Few outside the Chronosapian hierarchy have ever seen this place. Zara moved to a control interface, copper fingers dancing across surfaces that responded to her by shifting between different temporal states, calibrating for quantum equation visualization, focusing on alteration points across dimensional spectrum. The timestream display shifted, reality threads fading as a new pattern emerged, a complex mathematical structure that seemed to underlie all realities simultaneously. The equation itself manifested not as symbols but as relationship patterns, connections between dimensional constants that defined how reality functioned at its most fundamental level. The quantum equation in its observable form, Zara explained. Each nodal INTER section represents a dimensional constant. Altered nodes appear as chromatic discordance. As she spoke, certain points within the equation glowed with unnatural purple light, the same hue Kronos had observed in dimensional breaches. 7 alteration points, Drive, Maxwell counted, immediately analyzing the pattern. Distributed across different dimensional substrates but working in concert. 7 elder entities working together. Kronos concluded, recalling the assembly's information. Each changing one part of the equation. Precisely. Zara manipulated controls further, focusing on temporal aspects of the alterations. Observing sequence and methodology, the display shifted again, showing the alterations not as static changes but as process, a carefully orchestrated sequence of modifications that had occurred across different timeframes despite affecting reality simultaneously. The sequence reveals coordination beyond what we previously detected, the temporal engineer observed. Clockwork eyes spinning rapidly as she processed information. Each alteration precisely calculated to magnify effects of others. Sophisticated multiversal mathematics beyond conventional comprehension. Can you identify the entities responsible? Lyra asked, divine attention focused intently on the display. Partial identification possible through energy signature analysis. Zara adjusted controls, highlighting individual alteration points. Void Emperor signature confirmed at primary node. Secondary signatures include Chronivore, Entropy Archon, and Dimensional Weavers Collective. I recognize those names from Pantheon records, Lyra noted with evident concern. Ancient entities typically operating independently. Their cooperation is unprecedented. What about the other 3 signatures? Kronos asked. Zara's expression became troubled, clockwork eyes briefly stuttering in their rotation. Unidentified by Chronopolis records. However, she hesitated, uncharacteristic for her precise nature. One signature contains temporal harmonics consistent with theoretical celestial pantheon energy patterns. The implication hung in the air like a physical presence. Lyra's perfect features hardened into divine mask, emotions carefully controlled. You suggest pantheon involvement in convergence acceleration, she stated, voice dangerously neutral. I report observable data, Zara replied carefully. Interpretation remains speculative without additional confirmation. Kronos studied Lyra carefully, noting microscopic fluctuations in her divine disguise, evidence of internal conflict beneath perfect composure. Could some faction within the pantheon be working with the elder entities? Theoretically possible but highly improbable, she responded after measured consideration. The pantheon exists to maintain multiversal stability. Convergence threatens that mandate directly. Unless some believe they'd control whatever emerges from collapse, drive. Maxwell suggested, her human perspective cutting through cosmic politics to practical motivation. Power often trumps principles, even for gods, I'd imagine. Something flickered in Lyra's ancient eyes, not anger at the suggestion, but what might have been painful recognition of its potential truth. This requires further investigation, she stated finally. The harmony of the pantheon may be compromised. In ways I was not authorized to disclose. Authorized, Kronos repeated, focusing on the specific word. Meaning you suspected something but were ordered not to reveal it. Before Lyra could respond, alarms blared throughout the observatory. Not standard security alerts but something more urgent, more fundamental. The timestream display flickered, patterns destabilizing as if reality itself suffered interference. Temporal integrity breach, Zara announced, abandoning the control interface to access emergency systems. Unauthorized chronometric manipulation detected within Chronopolis Central Core. In English, Dr. Maxwell requested tensely. Someone's attacking the city's temporal foundation, Kronos translated, instinctively gathering chaos energy in preparation for whatever came next. Sabotage rather than external attack, Zara clarified, clockwork eyes spinning frantically as she accessed multiple information streams simultaneously. Internal systems compromised, temporal anchors destabilizing. The observatory chamber shuddered violently, golden light flickering as chronological stability fluctuated. On the displays, time streams began separating from their proper courses, intersecting chaotically with catastrophic results. We need to leave, Lyra stated decisively. Now, Chronopolis is collapsing into temporal chaos. Calculating emergency extraction pathway, Zara responded. Fingers moving across controls with desperate precision. Native reality coordinates still accessible through diminishing temporal corridor. Another violent shudder rocked the chamber. Sections of the timestream display began dissolving, reality itself becoming uncertain as fundamental constants destabilized. No time for calculations, Kronos decided, reaching for his chaos power. I'll create a portal directly. Quote, unadvisable during temporal flux, Zara cautioned. Chaos teleportation without stable reference points risks multidimensional dispersal. We have no choice, he countered. Emerald energy already gathering around his hands. This place is coming apart. As if confirming his assessment, the observatory core suddenly fractured, golden light spilling out erratic patterns as crystallized time began breaking apart. Alarms reached new intensity, their sound distorting as time itself became inconsistent within the chamber. At least let me provide temporal stabilization, Zara insisted, extending copper-toned hands toward Kronos. My technology can establish minimum reference constants for transit targeting. Dr. Maxwell moved quickly to Kronos' side. Professional calm maintained despite the chaos erupting around them. She's right. You need stable coordinates or we could end up anywhere, or anytime. Lyra joined them, divine energy flowing round her as her human disguise faltered under stress. I can provide harmonic structure to your chaos, as before. The combination should increase stability during transit, with time literally breaking down around them. Kronos accepted their assistance without further debate. Zara's temporal technology interfaced with his chaos energy, providing mathematical precision to raw power. Lyra's Harmon, I see influence organized the wild potential into sustainable patterns. Focus on your native Earth, the temporal engineer instructed. Your connection to that reality provides strongest probability anchor. Quantum Defense Initiative coordinates optimal for successful materialization. As Kronos concentrated on Quantum Point, reality fractured completely around them. The observatory dissolved into temporal static, past and future bleeding into present as chronological structure failed. Throughout Chronopolis, similar collapse propagated at exponential rates, a city outside time suddenly experiencing all times simultaneously. Transit initiating, Zara announced, voice distorting as time fluctuated. Probability envelope narrowing to 78% successful translation. Good enough, Kronos decided. unleashing his fully gathered power. Emerald energy exploded outward, wrapping around the four of them in protective cocoon as reality disappeared completely. Unlike previous teleportation experiences, this transit felt utterly chaotic. No clear direction, no stable pathway, just desperate movement through collapsing dimensional space. Images flashed past at impossible speed, fragments of realities. Glimpses of times that might have been or might yet be. Kronos sensed rather than saw his companion's presence, their very existence reduced to probability patterns within the chaos of transit. Then, abruptly, reality reasserted itself. They materialized in Quantum Point's central chamber, the same monitoring room where their journey had begun. Impact scattered personnel, who had been working at various stations, alarms immediately blaring as security systems detected unauthorized entry. Kronos stumbled forward, unusually disoriented by the violent transition. Beside him, Drive, Maxwell collapsed to her knees. The human body less equipped to handle dimensional trauma. Lyra maintained her composure with divine resilience, though her disguise flickered noticeably before stabilizing. Zara appeared least affected, her temporal physiology designed to withstand chronological stress. Director Chambers, present in the chamber during their arrival, recovered from surprise with remarkable speed. "Security stand down," he ordered, already moving toward them. "Medical team to Central Command immediately." As facility personnel shifted from alarm to organized response, Kronos took stock of their situation. They had escaped Chronopolis's collapse, returned to their native reality, and brought both Lyra and Zara with them, significant accomplishments given the circumstances. Yet the implications of what they'd discovered weighed heavily on his transformed consciousness. "Report," Chambers requested succinctly, helping drive Maxwell to her feet with unexpected gentleness. "The situation is more complex than we initially understood," she responded, professional demeanor reasserting itself despite evident exhaustion. "Director, may I introduce Zara Kronos, temporal engineer from Chronopolis." The copper-skinned woman inclined her head in formal acknowledgement, clockwork eyes studying the director with evident calculation. "Your facility appears adequately equipped despite technological limitations. Acceptable operational base given current circumstances." Chambers absorbed this unusual introduction without visible reaction. "We've had some experience adapting to unusual allies recently." He turned to Kronos. "I assume your unexpected return method indicates complications." "You could say that," Kronos confirmed grimly. "We've confirmed the convergence threat is deliberate, coordinated, and more sophisticated than initially believed. Multiple elder entities working together to reshape reality according to their specifications. And potentially with allies in unexpected places." Drive, Maxwell added carefully, glancing toward Lyra. The goddess met her gaze without evasion. "The possibility of Pantheon involvement requires investigation. I'll seek clarification through appropriate channels." "Chronopolis has fallen," Zara interjected, focusing on immediate concerns. "Temporal nexus compromised through internal sabotage. Probability calculations suggest coordinated attack designed specifically to prevent our access to observatory data." "They knew we were there," Kronos realized. "Someone tipped them off." "The implications are disturbing," Lyra acknowledged. "Few entities possess awareness of Chronopolis operations, fewer still have capability to compromise its temporal foundations. We were targeted deliberately." Drive, Maxwell concluded, "which means whatever we discovered was significant enough to warrant immediate response." "The quantum equation alterations," Zara confirmed. "Our observation of specific modification sequence revealed strategic information the elder entities preferred to keep hidden." Director Chambers absorbed this information with remarkable composure. "Then we need to understand exactly what you discovered and its strategic implications. But first," he gestured toward medical personnel who had arrived during their discussion, "you should all be examined. Interdimensional transit without OPER protocols can have significant physiological effects." "I am undamaged," Zara stated flatly. "Temporal engineering physiology designed for dimensional stress resistance. Divine essence does not require medical intervention," Lyra added, though with less dismissiveness. Dr. Maxwell, however, accepted medical assistance without protest. "Some baseline readings would be helpful. We need data on how interdimensional transit affects human physiology for future operations anyway." As medical personnel escorted her away, she glanced back at Kronos. "Don't start the strategic briefing without me. I want to hear everything we learned from the observatory." "Wouldn't dream of it," he promised, watching her departure with what might have been concern beneath his divine composure. "Your companion demonstrates remarkable resilience for her species," Zara observed, clockwork eyes tracking Drive. Maxwell's departure. Adaptability beyond standard human parameters. "Dr. Maxwell has been exceptional since we met," Kronos agreed. "Few humans could process cosmic revelations while maintaining scientific objectivity and practical focus." "She reminds me of someone," Lyra commented, "NU. Sewell personal observation from the typically formal goddess." When Kronos glanced at her questioningly, she added, "There was once a mortal mathematician who perceived harmonic patterns in reality without divine guidance." Similar clarity of thought. While they waited for Dr. Maxwell's return, Director Chambers organized facility resources with efficient precision. Within minutes, the initial chows of their unexpected arrival had transformed into coordinated response. Monitoring systems adapted to track Zara's unique temporal signature, information systems prepared to receive data from their expedition, and security protocols adjusted to accommodate their expanded team. "Your organization demonstrates impressive adaptation capabilities," Zara noted, observing these preparations with apparent approval. "Functionality within limitation parameters. The initiative has learned to be flexible," Chambers replied, accepting her alien phrasing without comment. "Dimensional incursions don't allow time for bureaucratic procedure." When Dr. Maxwell rejoined them 30 minutes later, she appeared refreshed despite the ordeal they'd experienced. Medical intervention had addressed her visible injuries, and natural resilience handled the rest. "Clean bill of health," she reported. "Though apparently I've experienced enough chronological radiation to make me slightly younger than when we left. About 16 hours worth. Standard temporal displacement effect," Zara confirmed dispassionately. "Negligible impact on overall lifespan. I've always appreciated getting time back rather than losing it." Drive. Maxwell replied with dry humor. "Now, about that strategic briefing." Chambers led them to a secure conference room equipped with advanced holographic systems and analysis technology. Once sealed inside, Zara immediately approached the technical interface, copper fingers connecting directly with initiative systems. "Compatibility limited but sufficient," she assessed. "TRA-NS fairing observatory data within system parameters." The holographic display activated, showing a simplified version of the quantum equation they had observed in the temporal observatory. Even reduced to comprehensible visualization, its complexity remained staggering, a multidimensional mathematical construct that defined reality's fundamental operation. "This represents the quantum equation as it should exist," Zara explained, highlighting key intersection points within the structure. "Fundamental multiversal constant establishing interaction protocols between dimensional membranes." The display shifted, showing the same equation with subtle but critical alterations, points where purple energy disrupted natural patterns. "Current state after elder entity manipulation," she continued. 7 critical modification points, each altering specific dimensional interaction parameters. Dr. Maxwell studied the display with intense scientific focus. The alterations appear to be forcing d-dimensional membranes into proximity by changing repulsion constants. "Correct," Zara confirmed. "Natural dimensional separation maintains reality integrity. Altered equation reduces separation force, allowing membrane contact. Like removing the insulation between electrical wires," Kronos suggested, drawing on Ben Tennyson's simpler understanding of complex principles. "Conceptually accurate," the temporal engineer acknowledged. "Contact between incompatible realities produces energy discharge, dimensional breach events. What we've been experiencing is invasions," Chambers noted, immediately grasping strategic implications. "These aren't random attacks but symptoms of fundamental breakdown." "Precisely." Zara manipulated the display further, showing progressive effects over time. "Continued degradation follows exponential pattern. Current projection indicates critical threshold in approximately 72 days. "Critical threshold," Dr. Maxwell prompted. "Point beyond which H-dimensional separation cannot be restored," Zara explained grimly. "Complete multiversal collapse inevitable regardless of intervention." The room fell silent as this timeline settled on them. Seve. NTY 2 days until reality itself passed the point of no return. Can the alterations be reversed? Chambers asked, cutting directly to practical concerns. Theoretically yes, the temporal engineer confirmed. Each modification point requires counter-modification with precisely calibrated energy signature. And let me guess, Kronos interjected. My chaos energy signature is somehow compatible with this counter-modification. More than compatible, Zara corrected. Optimal. Your unique energy pattern contains harmonic frequencies precisely inverse to elder entity modifications. Status T. Cal impossibility suggesting deliberate design rather than coincidence. Azimuth. Kronos realized, memories of the Omnitrix creator surfacing from Ben Tennyson's past. He built the Omnitrix with the mathematical constants he didn't fully understand. What if he was guided somehow? What if the Omnitrix was always meant to be part of this? Speculation consistent with observed pattern, Zara acknowledged. Temporal probability streams suggest deliberate countermeasure establishment across extended timeframe. So someone's been playing an extremely long game. Drive. Maxwell summarized. Setting U.P. pieces millions of years in advance for this specific moment. The question becomes who? Lyra noted, divine awareness clearly troubled by implications. Few entities possess perception across such timescales. Fewer still have capability to subtly influence development across multiple realities. Could it be the same Pantheon faction potentially working with the elder entities? Kronos suggested. A cosmic civil war played out across reality itself. Possible, the goddess admitted reluctantly. Divine politics often transcend mortal understanding. Factions within the Pantheon occasion. Ally pursue divergent interpretations of our mandate. Regardless of who arranged the countermeasures, we need to implement them, Chambers interjected, returning focus to immediate concerns. Seve. NTY 2 days isn't much time to save all of reality. Zara manipulated the display again, highlighting the 7 modification points individually. Counter-modification requires physical presence at each alteration site. Dimensional coordinates exist at reality intersection points, locations where membrane boundaries thin naturally. And I'm guessing these points aren't conveniently located, Kronos remarked. Distributed across multiple realities and dimensional planes, the temporal engineer confirmed. Access requires precise navigation through unstable dimensional space. So we need mount 7 separate expeditions to 7 different locations across different dimensions, drive. Maxwell summarized, each requiring Kronos's direct intervention to rewrite fundamental mathematical constants. While the entities who created the problem actively work to stop us, Kronos added. No pressure. The alteration sequence is critical, Zara continued, highlighting one specific modification point. Primary node must be addressed first. Located at coordinates corresponding to your reality's Antarctic dimensional weak point. Antarctica, Chambers noted with resignation. Of course it couldn't be somewhere convenient. Weak point exists approximately 3 kilometers beneath ice shelf, the temporal engineer specified. Dimensional membrane approximately 7% thin. Than global average due to magnetic field anomaly. We can mobilize resources for Antarctic expedition immediately, Chambers decided. The initiative maintains research facilities near the Southie RN magnetic pole that can serve as forward operating base. Time factor critical, Zara cautioned. Counter-modification must occur during specific temporal window corresponding to dimensional resonance peak. Next viable window occurs in approximately 36 hours. 36 hours to prepare an expedition to the bottom of the world, drive. Maxwell said with grim determination. We've worked with worse deadlines. As they continued discussing operational logistics, Kronos found himself momentarily stepping back from the conversation. The weight of responsibility settled on him with familiar discomfort. Saving reality itself had been Ben Tennyson's job often enough, but never with such cosmic stakes or limited timeframe. Lyra noticed his momentary withdrawal, moving closer while the others focused on expedition planning. You doubt your capacity, she observed quietly. Wouldn't you? He responded. 3 days ago I was still adjusting to godhood. Now I'm apparently the key to saving the entire multiverse from collapse. Your transformation was no accident, the goddess reminded him. Whether guided by Azimuth's hidden knowledge or cosmic design beyond even Pantheon understanding. You exist precisely because this moment requires your specific capabilities. That's not exactly comforting, Kronos noted wryly. Being a cosmic puzzle piece doesn't guarantee success. Perhaps not, Lyra acknowledged with unexpected gentleness. But consider this from divine perspective. Across infinite possibilities, countless potential saviors, you specifically emerged at precisely this moment. The mathematics alone suggest purpose beyond coincidence. Before he could respond, Drive. Maxwell called them back to the planning discussion. We need to establish exactly what Kronos will need to do at each modification site. Zara, can you provide specifics on the counter-modification process? The temporal engineer nodded, returning to the holographic display. Process requires E-size chaos energy application according to mathematical framework, essentially rewriting fundamental constants through direct manipulation of dimensional substrate. Like performing surgery on reality itself, Kronos suggested. Accurate analogy, Zara confirmed. Procedure requires extreme precision. Energy discharge exceeding parameters by even fractional percentage would accelerate rather than reverse membrane degradation. So I need control, not just power, Kronos concluded. Precision application of chaos energy. Which is where my assistance becomes essential, Lyra interjected. Harmony provides necessary structure for chaos application. Our combined aspects create balanced intervention capability. And I'll monitor the quantum effects in real time, Drive. Maxwell added. Provide scientific guidance on energy application parameters. Zara's clockwork eyes spun briefly before settling. Optimal team configuration for success probability. Combined divine, temporal, and scientific perspective creates balanced approach to fundamentally complex problem. As the planning continued into technical specifics, Kronos found himself studying his unexpected teammates with new appreciation. Each brought unique perspective and capability essential to the impossible task before them. Dr. Maxwell's brilliant scientific mind translated cosmic concepts into practical application. Zara's temporal expertise provided precise mathematical framework for their intervention. Lyra's divine wisdom offered perspective beyond mortal comprehension. Together, they represented an unprecedented combination of knowledge and power, perhaps the only combination capable of addressing the convergence crisis. The briefing extended for hours, delving into increasingly complex details of quantum mathematics, dimensional physics, and tactical planning. When they finally concluded, fatigue showed clearly on Dr. Maxwell's human features, while even Zara's clockwork eyes rotated more slowly than usual. We should rest before final preparations, Chambers suggested, ever practical. The Antarctic expedition launches in 18 hours. All personnel need to be at peak capacity. As they dispersed, Drive. Maxwell lingered behind with Kronos. How are you holding up? She asked once they were alone in the conference room. And don't give me the divine entity line about not needing rest. They noticed you still think and react like Ben Tennyson more often than not. The observation caught him slightly off guard, not for its accuracy but for her perceptiveness in noticing. I'm adjusting, he admitted. This is all happening faster than I expected. Welcome to interdimensional crisis management, she replied with a tired smile. Never enough time to properly process the impossible. Before the next impossible thing demands attention. You speak from experience. 2 years at the initiative, she confirmed. Though nothing on this scale before. She hesitated, then added, for what it's worth. I think you're handling godhood remarkably well. Most people would be completely overwhelmed. Bold of you to assume I'm not, Kronos responded with unexpected humor. I'm just better at hiding it now. Dr. Maxwell laughed, a genuine sound that momentarily lightened the weight of their circumstances. Fair enough. Even gods get to be overwhelmed when reality itself is at stake. She gathered her notes, preparing to leave. Get some rest, divine or otherwise. Antarctica awaits, and I suspect saving the multiverse requires at least a power nap. As she departed, Kronos flew. ND himself appreciating her uniquely human perspective, practical, resilient, maintaining humor even when facing cosmic catastrophe. In many ways, she embodied the best qualities he remembered from his human life. Left alone, he attempted what passed for rest in his transformed state, not sleep as humans understood it, but a sort of energy conservation mode where his consciousness processed recent experiences while his divine essence renewed itself. Images from their interdimensional journey flowed through his awareness, the assembly station's clinical precision, Chronopolis's temporal wonder. The Antarctic expedition now being prepared. Throughout these fragments, faces appeared with striking clarity, drive. Maxwell's determined focus, Lyra's divine composure occasionally revealing deeper complexity. Zara's clockwork eyes calculating probabilities across multiple timelines. Amidst these reflections, a sudden realization crystallized, something about the quantum equation's alteration pattern. And that had been nagging at his transformed consciousness. The 7 modification points, when viewed from certain perspective, formed a configuration strikingly similar to the original Omnitrix interface. Not coincidence. Pattern. Someone had altered reality's fundamental equation according to the Omnitrix's specific configuration, a message or signature hidden within cosmic mathematics, waiting for the one person who might recognize its significance. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about elder entities forcing reality collapse, this was about something deeply personal connected to Ben Tennyson's past. As Antarctic expedition preparations continued around him, Kronos contemplated this revelation in solitude. The convergence crisis had just become even more complex, and far more personal, than anyone yet realized. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.